Call to order, Peter Morton. Here, Foley. Chris Olney. Here. Sue Filbert here. Laura Tenney here. Eric Creighton here. Great. Is Gail here? I have to admit, everybody.
Progress.
Somebody has their, they have their noise, they're doing without the audio. Okay, first off, we have an A and R for 10, not 10 Ninth Circle, Old Essex Road, 96. Old Essex Road, and we reviewed this last time. And you have the material in your packet. I'll take a motion to approve, to endorse the A and R for 96 Old Essex Road. Yeah, just take a motion first. Oh, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had brought an issue up with the plan that it should have had an additional note on the plan that indicated that the parcel that's being created is a
Non-buildable.
non-buildable parcel essentially. And that it is purpose of the plan is to combine it with the abutting property, the neighbors there. So, I did talk to Mr. Collins and he said that he was gonna talk to his engineers about making a little adjustment on the plan. Our regulations actually do require that there be a note to that effect.
Okay. So if, what I would suggest is that we take a motion to endorse the plan subject to a resubmission of the plan to Mark Resnick and his indication that it meets the requirements of our bylaw. Mr. Collins, let's get a motion to, first of all.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
okay, Mr. Collins, is that, can you hear us?
Yep.
Can you get your, the plan modified to indicate the, change as our planner has asked?
Yeah, on Thursday, I asked for a clarification on the language you wanted added. Given that this is a legal document that'll be registered, and the selling of that parcel to the abutters will happen in the future, my question was, should the language state parcel A is a non-buildable parcel? Or should it state parcel A is a non-buildable parcel and to be combined with the abutting land of, in the abutters' names? But my question was, I've got a P&S to sell this property, but what if the deal falls through? The plan will say that this parcel A is to be combined with the abutters, and it seemed to me that I wasn't sure if that's exactly what you wanted me to do at this stage, or that language gets added later.
Okay, your application does say creating a parcel A to be sold to the abutter. So, I think if the parcel is not joined to the other parcel, then it's not subject to a required.
Well, yeah, no,
Unless
it
it's
still is subject to an A&R, and that's even more of the reason to ensure if the sale doesn't go through, it's even more of a reason for it to just state that it's not a buildable parcel. So.
Or, okay, so the note on the plan would be that the small parcel, I don't have the plan in front of me, would be be designated a non-buildable parcel on the plan. Okay,
Not
catch. Okay, does that work for you, Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion questions? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that's a unanimous vote. I'm not sure, Gail. Gail, are you here? Oh, yeah, I see you. Okay. Great. The next order of business is MBTA zoning. Mark, you want to tell us? where we are?
Okay, so the copy you have in front of us is the latest, version of the bylaw. I accepted all the changes, track changes from the last meeting, and then I created this new document with the, additional things you had mentioned that you wanted adjusted. So, the first, change, and this, I'm sorry, I printed this out, except it didn't in color. So, but the first track changes are on, it does still show the lines underneath and through. The sections are on page 3. And you had wanted to move accessory structures to be a special permit. And so it moved to the line 81, and it's down on line 83 now.
In the back, there used to be less definitions.
Yes, well, we had removed definitions in the last version. So there wasn't any changes to those, so
Oh.
they, so,
Because I came across Arlington's, that's one of the 3 that's been approved, and they define multifamily housing. Then at the end, they say excluding ADUs, which I think we might want to do. For a multifamily housing definition.
that's an entirely different thing, really. Accessory dwelling unit is accessory to the primary dwelling, it's a single family home. I don't think you need to add it.
So you
Yes.
couldn't have two houses on a lot and then 2 ADUs added to those houses, and that would not be considered multifamily?
Well, no. You would be able to, if you were in a zone that allowed you to do 4 units, you would be able to do 2-unit buildings.
Well, it is an interesting question because the housing bond bill does say that accessory dwelling units will be allowed by right. So the question is, if you have a
ADU,
3 a multifamily dwelling building with 3 units, would accessory dwelling units be allowed by right to that?
It's an interesting question. So for the record, in case my voice is being picked up, I'm Leanna Dennis Associates. I have to look at what the housing bond bill has in it now. I had looked at an earlier version, but haven't seen the most recent. I thought it was allowed as of right in single family districts. And so that might preclude adding it to a multi-family. The other thing that I was trying to get another finding this morning and have a check on is whether, or my assumption is that as with multifamily, each community can modify some of the standards for that, but I haven't actually checked to see if that's true yet. So that's on my list. But I
So-
think we could leave that as an open question.
well,
for
that
discussion.
wasn't really my question. My question was more, could you have a house with an ADU and a house with an ADU, and is that considered?
You mean on the same lot, you would have 2 houses on the same lot, each with an ADU? I think to Mark's point, that would be, those aren't. Good question.
I was
Because they didn't
curious,
start out as multifamily houses. They started out as 2 single families on a lot, each adding an ADU as opposed to conversions, say, into multifamily units. That's an interesting question. I think we need to research that further. I don't think so. I think they count as a single family, each with an ADU, and not as a multi. For one thing, each of those are only 2. They on the same lot, they were 4, but again, they were single families to start with.
Yeah, but the definition of multifamily is 2 units in a single dwelling.
Right, but if you look at the, and it's, the definition of multifamily is 3 and 1, or more than 1 unit, per building with more than 1 building per lot, which gets you to that minimum of 2 duplexes. I think the question becomes, how is ADU defined? Certainly in the state sample zoning, prior to the housing bond bill, it was limited to, the sample zoning had it limited to 900 square feet. Obviously, other communities have done that differently, so if I would look to how is ADUs defined versus how is multifamily defined, and if it's a single family with an ADU of 900 square feet, that would be different from 2 multifamily units. So it would come down to the definitions of how you do that.
So what are current definitions?
Yeah,
Okay, so our
But-
definition is just a percentage of square footage.
so then that would be, so your accessory dwelling unit would be the percentage of square footage. Your multifamily unit isn't limited in that respect, but it can't be limited in that respect. So you have a differentiation of definitions at that point.
But if they're trying to take advantage of the multifamily zoning district.
Right.
2 single-family dwellings with accessory units, it's really 2 two-family dwellings. One with a smaller unit, regardless of the size, and one larger. So
If
it's
you're talking
really
about a
4
new-
units. If it's in the overlay district, it's 4 units, regardless of the size of the
That's sort of
unit.
the point.
Yeah, yeah, if you're talking about a new build and that's what they're doing, then I would agree with that, Mark. But if you're talking about adding an ADU to existing buildings, then I think the definition of your ADU tends to apply.
So anyway, I like the way Arlington did is then excluding ADUs, because then it solves the problem.
We can have a look at that.
Is there any reason to not do it that way? I mean, I tend to agree with Mary that it's the subsequent future.
Your concern, just as an example, that somebody might do a conversion to a 3-family or new 3-family. And then, so 3 units rather than 1 building, and then each of those units adds an ADU, so now that you're up to 6 units. If that is a concern, what you've suggested, Mary, clarifies that you want just the multifamily.
I think the more likely is a 3-family 3-unit multifamily. One of which is 5,000 square feet because it's the primary house, and the other 2 are very subordinate to that.
Right.
But then in the future, I want to convert that 5,000 square foot unit into 2, using the ADU provisions.
I think you could do it one of 2 ways. You could do it the way Mary suggested, we just say multifamily does not allow ADUs, or in the definition. That almost creates a standard within the definition, which I tried to avoid. The other option would be to leave the definition the way it is, but to put in either the accessory uses that section under, permitted uses, that accessory dwelling units are not allowed as part of multifamily use. That might be a little bit, no, not dissing Arlington, but that just might be a little bit cleaner way of doing it, and has it right there with the uses, so there's no question about it.
I could go with either one.
What's the board's feeling about that topic? For starters, is shutting the door on future ADUs attached to a multifamily, a CHOD development, something we want to prohibit, foresee and shut down?
Well, it's a little speculative because
Right.
we're talking about a potential state law which is only under consideration.
As the house.
Past the House, but it's got a ways to go. And I don't know, none of us know what it actually says. It may say that accessory dwelling units are allowed only for single-family homes, in which case where, I guess it doesn't hurt, overkill doesn't hurt, but it's,
Is there a reason not to prohibit it?
I don't know, I haven't thought about it.
Okay, that's
Sarah,
fair.
was it, there's a reason, your question was, is there a reason to not permit it?
Prohibit,
Yeah, but
no reason.
Right, not
it's a double negative.
Not prohibit.
I think the reason is we haven't had any time to
Think about it,
the
right,
issue.
okay.
We just got it from Dennis.
Yeah.
And we have worked on the definitions and already the state's multifamily definition is different from our current zonings. We're already dealing with that. I personally, would like time to think about the issue.
Okay.
I think we should go ahead with what we have.
It certainly can, we can remain an open question, I think, for
Yes.
a moment. Okay,
So do you want to vote on it, or are you just gonna?
I think the suggestion from our task force members is that we keep it as an open question for the moment and circle back to it. I think we'll have a little bit more.
Well, these aren't regular, I mean, this is just a draft that's going through pre-application. So it's not like it's the final, but it's something to keep in mind. when it comes back.
And you might have had the seventh vote by the time it comes back, which is not really clear.
Yeah.
So.
And what happens if when it does come back and we decide to add it then?
Yeah, then we have
submit
to
it?
go
Yeah.
back and forth. I sort of feel like might be better to add it as a more restrictive. Prohibiting the ADUs is more restrictive. We can always remove it, but then we would get a determination from the HLC and municipal law, whether it's too restrictive. I'm
You could make, if you don't want to kind of tinker with the text now, we could make a list of open questions that the planning board has for HLC and say, here's our draft text, but here are some breaking things that we'd like to consider as part of our pre-application.
That seems like a good idea. My guess is there are a few others. That seem like a reasonable approach. Clarification from them too about how that
Exactly.
would be applied.
I'm sure you're not the only community who's been
Right.
doing this.
Well, Arlington raised it, okay. I see a couple of other typos, so let's not talk, if we have more typos, we should all read this again for typos. There are a couple that I just saw, that we've flagged before. Mark, you want to keep going through any substantive changes that,
The next change that you asked to have done is the add to the dimensional standard chart. To first off, fix the minimum lot size for the beach and CC districts to 6,500, which is what's shown in the model. To add a line for the base lot size, which is for the first unit, and then the additional lot area per dwelling unit stays the same. And added some height maximums, lot coverage maximums. And I changed, talking with Emily, lot coverage by structures and parking to lot structures and impervious surface. As Emily said, it didn't change the results. So, the next changes were
who
on,
has a question about that?
Just for clarification, where you say by structures and impervious. I think it was-
Impervious surface.
yeah, our current bylaw says impervious surface, so if you have a big patio, that's considered impervious surface or a paved driveway.
I think the point is
Totally
the word
suggesting we
surface is
Put the
missing.
word surface in there. It just
Oh.
means impervious, which is.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Question.
Yep. Yes. Okay. Then the next change was on off-street parking. Where I moved structured parking. Wanted that moved to the previous, end of the previous section, so it's in the number 7. And, the last sentence, you wanted a 35 feet and 3 stories above the ground level. 130 is where structured parking was moved to. And that last sentence is 130.
Four.
So my recollection and wrong is that we had said we wanted the parking structures to be less than the building height.
35 feet.
So, okay, for Newport,
You said 35 feet.
We're only allowed in the sub-districts.
so above ground, so we're saying we could do,
If you want to excavate one underground, but what people see is will be the same, 35 feet and 3 stories above, right? Next, top of the next page, review requirements, I changed the permitting authority to the planning board. That was the only change on that page.
I meant to raise this last time. The design review committee, we have no member shall serve more than 5 consecutive terms in their 1-year term. If we have somebody who really understands this seems like an area where somebody with expertise who's done a great job might serve more than 5 years. And shaking our head no, but
No, I'm shaking my head, yes. The more you restrict who can be a member and who has to be ejected.
right. If we have somebody who's, has reviewed a lot of these things and has the institutional memory and has I see no reason to, and given that they have to be appointed every year, we don't, if they're, the annual appointment sort of solves the problem of,
No, it doesn't solve the problem. I can assure you.
well, no, it helps of people who are maybe, not doing their
People who are
job.
non-contributing.
Right.
It solves the problem.
Right.
I don't think there is a problem with people who are contributing.
Right, to serve, that's my point. So I just,
so and this would get posted, because I think that was the problem that the select board discussed at some point, that some people were just
rolling
re-upping.
over, right, they have
And
to be
it was never
reappointed.
posted.
So I'd just like to suggest that we strike the B, design review, members shall be reappointed, but no members should be reappointed, period. No member shall serve more than 5 consecutive terms, strike that. Because their reappointment is, yeah, does anybody, any objections to that?
No, but do
Mark.
we have to list that we post?
I think appointment, not, I don't think you approve. Okay, thank you. Sorry to add another wrinkle.
Good. The next page. The first, line 200, just clarifying what you wanted submitted, site plans, building elevations, floor plans, and 3-dimensional views of the site. And then, the other edits that we talked about was adding word chod to line 226. That is all on this page.
What about parking?
Yeah, that's. the next page.
No. I'm sorry,
Parking would be, when we get to line page that starts with 246.
Oh, I haven't,
I think you're talking about
231. We're on 234.
31. No, 231 is project, that's in project phase.
Am I like-
228 starts project phase.
So on line 237, you have planning board may reduce the requirement of parking by 20%.
Looking at the right one, Mark?
Am I looking at it right?
No,
No,
you
that's
are.
fine.
Oh, yes, no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at both versions. That's where the edits are easy to read. Page
I
230.
think that's what my notes say. from last time.
Yes. Sorry. Page.
Mary, did you have a
Yes.
question about that?
Well, I mean, I don't agree with it. I think that, you know, we started out the beginning of the meeting saying the task force was listening to the residents and we were doing the 1.5 spots. And by the end of the meeting, we had wiped that out. I discussed it with many residents, this past weekend and shocked that we would do such a thing when we have a parking problem, that it's gonna flow onto the street. At the very least, if you're gonna reduce a proposal of parking, then you should reduce the amount of impervious surface, because a developer will just say, oh, now I've got some extra space, I can build an accessory structure, I can do a patio.
But it's subject to site plan review.
Well, but site plan review is not a catch-all. So I think, you know, I got a little attacked when I proposed having an open space requirement. And now we're saying we want to reduce off-street parking and have no open space requirement and have no limit on impervious surface. So I'm not really clear what we're doing with this, but it seems to be going backwards.
So I think we do still have that, this doesn't change the impervious surface requirements. And this is subject to site plan review, and I think we did vote this last time. We kind of spent a considerable amount of time. So on this, and it was a kind of a compromise to use site plan review, I think particularly in depending on the situation.
So I have just one
Yeah,
suggestion for this, which is to say that reduce the required parking by no more
More
than
than, yeah.
20%.
Yes, and I was in the minority on the vote. But what I'm reiterating is the shock that residents had hearing this, and that I think we're definitely moving in the wrong direction. And it doesn't change the impervious surface amount that we have. So you're reducing off-street parking requirement, but maintaining the impervious surface percentage so that, again, a developer could then, instead of a parking spot, now there's a patio. So it doesn't make sense that you would spill parking out onto the street to make room for a patio.
so I think site plan review this is with site plan review. So does anybody else want to comment on, revisit that, or should we move on?
I think we discussed it, and I think if people are upset about it, they can come to public forums and tell us so. And
Yeah, we can always remove that in the
Sure.
future. But I think,
It's not the default.
right,
The default is, it's still what it was before.
I understand that, and I
And I
think,
hope people understand that.
and I think the state, my understanding is the state has been very clear that we shouldn't put a lot of subjective things in here, and I think saying we can waive things and reduce things on some site plans for a developer and may change it for another developer, I think the state might have a problem with that, but we'll find out.
Well, the other thing is that if a developer proposes senior housing under a CHOD, you're not gonna require full parking for a senior property.
You can't do senior housing under a child.
Of course you can, yes,
That's
it's multifamily
age
housing, doesn't matter.
you can't
We can't
require.
require it, but we can certainly allow
Okay, let's, I think
it. Well, let's move on.
we can always, we can always change that in the future if we hear a lot of additional comments on that. Okay, Mark, back to you.
And the only other few changes to, on the line, just the wording residential parking requirements. Line 235, there was a mistake of one of the references at section 944.5, it's on line 236. And on the next page, we wanted to add to the aesthetic standards. So I added that on line 246. That is all those changes.
Can I ask a question of Emily? So, we're pushing a lot of our special permit items into site plan review. And the wording back from the state on towns that, that had that, and they said either you have to, you know, change the district or, you know, or go the special permit. They, find the wording quickly, but they said that, they had wording that, but you're keeping the substantive items of the special permit. Do we need to word that in our site plan review language? We have not said that we're keeping the substantive.
Right, so for what we've said, is that these sections, the criteria for these sections apply where they're appropriate. For some of them, the ones that you're looking at here in 242 through 247, you are actually removing from site plan review because they're not appropriate topics for site plan review. Or they're being addressed elsewhere. For example, you're removing, I'm assuming, because I wasn't there for that discussion, but I'm assuming you're removing aesthetic standards because you've got your own design guidelines. The other portions of fiscal analysis, that's not part of site plan review. The other pieces, 2A, B, and C, what we're doing is saying, except for the ones that we accept, we take out, we're saying, look, these criteria apply, but they're just applying to the site plan review process. So I don't think you need to put the language that's in the letter, because the letter is kind of directing you to have the substantive. I think what we're trying to do with the language of the zoning is actually point to those substantive components and incorporate them into site plan review.
Okay.
So line 250 under other says the criteria for granting a special permit for each of these districts below are incorporated into the planning board site plan review process.
But I think within the language of the zoning, that's accomplishing what they recommended in the letter.
Okay, it doesn't read clearly like that to me, but as long as the state says with that.
Back to you.
Okay, the next changes that you asked to do was to remove the sentence at the top of the next page on line starting at 279. And also to remove number 4, which is at line 288. And to make a little change to number 2 of B2, which is on line 308. Remove the facades visible from the public way. So that is the additional changes to that page. Done to the next page. So we get to the landscape elements, architectural and landscape elements. So it should read now. Then
Next change is 475.
Or 63.
63.
That had to do with the lighting. And adding that, maybe dark sky compliance.
What line are you
463. Or 464.
If I may on that, usually when A, all in favor of dark sky compliance. B, when I do that, I usually point directly to the standards of the International Dark Sky Association, rather than just saying dark sky. So I can give that language to Mark if that's appropriate for you.
Great, that makes sense to me.
That's good because then as it changes.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, right.
And it gives requirements for, you know, full shield,
Mhm.
no upskill, no downskill, and so on.
The next change is on line 475, where I added integration of nature, sustainability, and resiliency. And then the next sentence, first sentence of that, we got rid of New England species and added Eastern North American with the goal of contributing ecological diversity to preserve species diversity, adaptability, and habitat.
I assume we capitalize north.
Oh, yes. And then we added the sentence on 481.
Mark, sorry, this might have been my typo, but on line 478, that preserve, I think, was supposed to be create diversity, adaptability, and habitat.
With the goal of,
To create. Contributing ecological diversity to create species diversity, adaptability, and habitat.
So on 478.
okay, so the goal to create,
Just changing preserve to create,
okay,
or actually it was provide, I'm sorry, provide. Just change preserve to provide when it's done.
okay.
Thank you,
I think that's all great additions.
thank you.
Last sentence. Trees shall be located on the site to provide passive cooling to buildings and shade to pedestrians and vehicular circulation with the goal of mitigating heat island effect and growing the town wide tree canopy. The next changes, line 497 and 98 to say that biotension areas are encouraged to be used. The word large rain events. We changed another shall to should on number 505. Waivers, I corrected reference, which is on line 533, which is 9.4.9. And got rid of the extra MC on line 535. Next thing was okay, number 558 was affordable units shall be constructed on site and payment in lieu of creating units or proposed off-site units are not permitted.
Lou is L with Lou.
Oh.
May I make a suggestion on that line, just grammatical? I think
Yep.
it's confusing about what the and is referring to. So affordable units shall be constructed on site semicolon, strike and, payment in lieu of creating units. Are not permitted.
Okay.
Can I have just a period instead?
Period's even better. Full stop.
So just so
Okay.
Peter and Gordon, so affordable units, sometimes they can pay into a
Fund.
affordable housing trust instead of making them or create them at a different site.
And the problem is we don't know how much they should pay.
But
What to do with money?
what's the problem with having it created on a different site?
It was discussed and decided we wanted them as part of the project.
Was that discussed with the,
We discussed it last time.
I've never been going this.
So does this bump back to our existing?
No, I mean, does it
affordable-
make does it make the change in our,
No, but like payment in lieu, does the calculation come from our existing?
so it says it's not allowed. Payment in
Okay.
lieu is not allowed.
Okay. Okay. Do we have the economic feasibility study yet?
We're not, the affordable,
The EFA,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the signature on the contract, so.
So it's still coming.
Yeah.
we can put that on the list and future. That could be removed at any time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going.
The last change, it's not the, yeah, this last change, line 575, we changed, zoning enforcement officer to building inspector.
It's actually technically the inspector of buildings.
So it is-
You made that point.
That's what we call it.
Okay.
Where did we land in the discussion of that? Who's submitting the paperwork to the state?
What's the next, I think what we, would like is a vote of the planning board for the MBTA zoning bylaw package to the select board with a recommendation that it be, I think this is answering your question, that it be submitted to on behalf of the town, to the Executive Office of Housing and Living Communities and the Municipal Law Unit for review. Is that the right process?
I think that's not what Mary was asking about.
Oh, is that, I'm sorry.
I think Mary was asking the affordable, put these things on the,
Oh,
it's,
I'm sorry.
SHI, we
Yeah,
had a
SHI.
discussion and then it just kind of dwindled last
we
week.
know it has to be, it has to be the town, but
It has
who
to
it
be
is,
town. But I'm not sure it goes in zoning, in this zoning.
Actually, it
Now,
falls.
there's state regulations about
Right.
how it's done, so rather than, there was a trend for a while of repeating all the state regulations in the zoning. But basically saying it has to go on the subsidized housing list, then they have to follow the regulations to go on the subsidized housing list, so you don't put them in this.
I just meant who's doing all the paperwork on the town end, because we've had some issues with that.
Right, so the question for us right now is, does anything need to go in this zoning for that, to solve that problem? Acknowledging that it is a problem.
I don't think you point to the person in the zone. to do
Okay.
that, so it's-
Okay, so I think what we need to do tonight, if we can do this while Emily is still here, if there's any questions. I believe that we would let the planning board, I'm looking for a motion for the planning board and
One more, thing that you could possibly put on the questions to take up later. I'm concerned that we're restricting, commercial use of residential units to customary, home occupations. Lots of people work from home.
I think that was in the Beaver Dam. We talked,
To require in Beaver Dam, if you're going to require that they get a permit from the ZBA to work at home, I think you're going to have a revolution.
okay, can we put that on the list of, Mark, on the list of things to reconsider? I think the idea was that someone who was generating a lot of traffic, a lawyer, but we did talk,
Maybe we
can put it on the list.
Maybe we can separate out certain types
Yeah,
of
I think that's a good.
just, home occupations from the remainder of the ones that are allowed.
people
Right.
Okay. So, I would like to, again, have a
So could I make
motion.
I'd like to make a motion
Please make a motion.
that we submit this zoning language as we discussed this evening to the select board for their consideration to pass it on to the state for a pre-application review.
Okay, so we're submitting it to HLC and the municipal law unit.
Correct. To both
And
those
with their,
entities.
ask them for theirs. Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion or clarification? Emily, is that the process that is, it's,
Yes.
and so the question that they will answer is this compliant with the law and regulations?
Right, they're
Not,
going to identify where there may be issues. that
Okay.
they want to address.
and the motion we're voting is not to endorse it to the voters one way or the other.
Correct, you're not binding yourself, you're just asking for the review of this.
Right. Okay. Discussion, Mary.
So Emily, we were waiting an answer back from you on variances and special permits as part of the multifamily overlay.
Mark and I talked about it, and I believe, so they're allowed multifamily as a right. But if somebody can't meet the dimensional standards in the table of dimension standards, it's my understanding that they would apply as any other as of right use to the ZBA, saying, hey, I can't meet the setback, I need a variance. And then I think that part would be up to the ZBA, because that's not in use, that is a dimensional standard. So
Could they ask for a height variance,
it would be up to the.
number of
ZBA.
units variance? So everything would get kicked to the ZBA.
That would be, that's my understanding. It's like any other as of right use that, somebody is having an issue. Now, the ZBA, the ZBA has to find if there's a hardship in order to grant that, so. The different towns have different ways of dealing with that, but that is, they'd have to follow the processes in order to call it.
So this becomes an as of right, but allow a special permit for certain things.
That, it looks like that's what you all decided at the last meeting, is that there's certain uses like the accessory structure.
Well, no, I mean a special permit for, or a variance, I'm sorry. So it could only be a
Yeah,
variance. They couldn't go to the ZBA for a special permit on anything.
Yeah, they have to follow the zoning.
It would be a variance for setback or height or number of units or
Not number of units.
Not number of
Yeah,
units.
number of unit.
Not number of
It would
units.
only be dimensional. standards.
dimensional. Okay.
And again, they would have to prove a hardship, in requesting that variance.
Okay, and then that would go through the abutter process.
Yeah, it would have to
appeal.
follow, my understanding is it would have to follow the standard CDA process.
Okay. Any other discussion on Chris's motion? Okay, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Chris,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes. Yes.
Peter, Mary,
No,
and the chair votes yes. Great, 6-1, Gail. Thank you, and we make sure we get on the Monday's meeting, and a lot. Okay, let's not bring in cell signaling. Thank you, Emily, for your thank you, Mark, for all your hard work on this. Very work. Good job. I think we should send it with line numbers. I think it's my.
I'm gonna do that from now on.
Yeah. Great, sorry to keep you folks waiting. You absolutely may, please do. And did one of you already sign on? Yeah, which is, what's Sam? All right, I'm gonna give you sharing. What have to read the? Got to read the, notice of the- At this point, I'm gonna, we'll open the continued public hearing while we're setting up chairs for signaling. The application of Old Quarry LLC for special permit site plan review. Like special permit and site plan review. Continued from last meeting, a motion, do I have a motion to open the continue the public hearing?
So moved.
Second. Second. Laura, Gordon Brewster,
Yes.
Laura, Penny? Oh, yes.
Yes, yes.
Sue, oh,
Yes.
Chris Olney.
Yes,
Mary Foley.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so the public hearing has been, continued public hearing has been open. Welcome and thank you for your patience. Sorry, we ran late there. And thank you for site walk today. Lovely walk in the quarry. Great. Tonight, I think we're talking, Mark, I'll turn it over to you or to your team.
Sure, you're gonna hear very little from me, because I'm in the presence of, Sam Gregorio. Oh, you're behind me, who is the senior civil engineer from TEC, who's our traffic guru. And, Sam is going to walk you through a slide deck, which is responsive to, our application, comments that came from Weston and Sampson during peer review, and more importantly, designed to establish that the project will satisfy the performance standards set forth in the zoning bylaw.
You should be able to share. While he's getting set up, this is a public hearing, so, we will hear from the self-signaling applicant, then we'll hear from our, peer review, Weston Sampson, and then we'll take, questions from the board, and there will be an opportunity for public comment. All right, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Once again, my name is Sam Gregorio. I'm the traffic engineer at TEC, office out of Lawrence, Mass. We've been working with the team here at CST since the inception of the project, covering the traffic and transportation aspects. So again, as part before, there's a slide deck about 12 or so slides that just goes over the big points in terms of the traffic and transportation for the site. And obviously, I'll be here for questions after that, after the stuff. So the town received a copy of the traffic study for the project back in early May, sent by the peer review. And as I walk through the items of the traffic report, this kind of goes through just the agenda items that I really just want to cover for that. One going through our coordination with MassDOT. MassDOT's a big player in this particular project as well. We have 128 and the ramps for 128 on School Street. So some of the intersections that we are looking at as part of the study are under their jurisdiction, in addition to those locations that are part of the town's jurisdiction that we also looked at. Going through the on those study intersections. Going through the existing conditions and then from that, the future conditions of traffic operations, and particularly what our site itself will do to it. So that's the how much traffic is our site generating and where is that traffic going to come from? And then really going through the overall mitigation package from our site for the traffic. That's both the off-site traffic mitigation, things that are directly related to roadways, and transportation demand management. So those different items that we can do on site that kind of lower the amount of vehicle traffic that we would actually be expecting to and from the site. And then finally going through some of the open comments in the Weston and Sampson peer review. So Weston and Sampson did submit a second letter last Thursday afternoon. Generally, I'll say the overwhelming majority of the traffic related comments have no further action. It's really a couple of them that are still open. And even then, we kind of have the answer already, or we have a defined response. It's just a matter of that might be open still to more to discussion. So this project has been going through coordination with MassDOT for now a little over a year. Most of that through their Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act process, MEPA, where Mass DOT being a state agency action on this project again, we about Route 128, have a very high level say in a lot of the project, but also a lot of in-depth say at some of the individual locations that our project touches. So through that process, we've been meeting with both the public-private development unit, which is a lot of what that MEPA coordination is with, and with District 4 directly. District 4 will be the owner and operator of anything that we intend to do on those particular intersections owned by MassDOT. But also, I obviously, we know we had that site walk earlier today with the board, but there was a further site walk a little over about a year ago with MEPA, which some of the members of the town also did attend. And that site walk was discussion on some of the traffic items as we did walk around the site. And then in late July last year, we were issued a certificate from MEPA attaching comments from MassDOT, which their comments to the certificate were basically in concurrence with what we are showing in our traffic study. Obviously, there'll be more coordination with MassDOT going forward as we do anything that involves their right of way for offsite mitigation. Also, as part of the project, just the project being there, we will have a permit to access state highway for the actual traffic that will go in to MassDOT, both with phase 1 and phase 2 of this development. Phase 1 will be kind of a traffic study again, and then concurrence that there's no necessary work happening on state highway during that time. And then more so during phase 2, and we'll talk about what that means when we get to the phase 2 mitigation items. So what we did look at in terms of study area is really based off of the MassDOT traffic study guidelines of what intersections either see 100 or more new trips in the worst hour of the day, or a 5% increase in that traffic, whatever one is lower. So some might only have, say, 5 cars going through, but if that's 5%, we look at that location. So from there, that includes 6 locations. 2 of them are kind of a mix of one location, northbound ramps and Mill Street. It is theoretically 2 intersections. But beyond that point, we get, and we'll show that in a little later slide, what that means in terms of traffic. That's really our bounds of what the 5% or 100 trips per hour at any individual location means. 3 of those locations, again, are under MassDOT jurisdiction. Those are the ones in orange. You'll see orange throughout the presentation. That kind of defines the MassDOT components, but obviously still being in the town of Manchester, we still want to highlight that for you as the board. So the existing conditions, obviously, we did traffic counts at each of these locations. They were done in January of last year. Those counts were adjusted for season. So it's based off of what gets to the average month. January is obviously lower than average. We can kind of assume that based where we are in Manchester. So all the developments are upwardly increased to meet what would be the average month condition. That comes into play there when we talk about things like orange for signals and other types of items. School Street itself, just over 6,000 trips per day right now. So that's just what you see today. With the speed on the roadway, that 85th percentile speed, so that's the general design speed operating speed that we consider the roadway to be at. 40 miles an hour northbound, 37 miles an hour southbound. Again, these speeds come into play a little later when we start talking about warrants for other mitigation items. In terms of crash history, the safety we see and our individual locations are pretty good on the site distance, but one of the things that we might normally be talking about in these meetings where we are crash history for these locations, there's not much crash history to speak of. There's nothing that's designated as a high crash location. All the individual intersections we looked at have 2 or less reported crashes per year. And I will say the word reported in there because you have to have a crash report actually go to DMV for us to actually consider it a crash in that case. So there might be a couple fender benders that happen with less than $1,000 kind of things that don't end up in that list. So I try to always preface that as we always get the conversation of, hey, I saw a crash last week, and that might not be on the list yet. But overall, it's a location that we would generally consider, nothing is theoretically considered safe, but in the general scheme of things, safer than what we would typically see on roadways here in Massachusetts. Everything was projected out to a future condition. We project out to 2033. So that's 10 years from when the study was originally documented with EVA, but it's 9 years now. So we want to show what that future condition will be in addition to what our traffic will be on the roadway. So we do show growth rate. It would generally be about 0.5% for this area, this type of roadway in Manchester. We've actually shown it at 1%. So we're showing something that's more conservative to give you a better aspect of what impacts could be. In addition to that, we've included the charter for other developments. 40B across the way, whether or not it happened or not, it's still included in the traffic study, let's just say that. And also a Cornerstone Church happened to have in their particular traffic study as well, added to the roadway. So that's just another layer of extra volumes we're adding to the roadway to make sure we're accounting for everything that's at least been permitted at the time the traffic study was conceptualized. As we go forward and do further any permitting with Mass DOT, other developments might be coming through. Those things will get added at that time. So even then, we'll be projecting out what other further impacts could be as we go through their permit. But also take into account other projects that have also happened in the area. Mass DOT just came in and painted, obviously, the bike lanes across the bridge, built a lot of the new ramps. The town itself did a lot of the ramp and sidewalk work down Lincoln Pleasant area on School Street, as well as the continuation of some of that bike lane going further down towards the town. So that comes into play when we talk about some of the other mitigation of our items that are not necessarily vehicle related. Now we can become connected to the rest of the town. So what are our impacts? So two of the other meetings, I know everybody knows this is a two-phase project. We have phase 1 and phase 2. For the purposes of this, it's about 50-50 in terms of the square footage for each of the different phases. Not exact, but for this purpose, it's kind of that close aspect. So I do split this up into each individual phase and what the traffic study shows, what the amount of trips would be that we would be adding to the roadway network. Not any individual roadway, but the network as a whole. This data does come from, and I'm sure you see this in every traffic study, from the IT trip generation manual. That collection of a couple thousand data points for different traffic counts happening. The most current version of this, 2021 data, so it's non-COVID related. So it's not artificially lowered by COVID. We will have, the next edition's already been, of data is already being asked for. I get emails every week about providing data for that if we wanted to. I say that because the new data, once it comes out, it's probably going to show a facility like this, an RD facility, a lot less traffic. Because the older editions, it does include some remote work. For 2021, how much were we doing for remote work? Whereas now, there's a lot more of that. It might not be every day a week, it might just be one day a week. Someone might be working from home, but that starts taking a lot of cars off the road when that happens. So that's something that's not accounted for yet, even in our numbers. So we could actually almost think that in the future, these numbers will probably be less when that starts coming into play. But again, 2,800 cars over the typical day. So that's in and out. So basically 1,400 total cars, but they come in and then they leave. In the AM, just about 260 for the full build out and 250 for the full build out in the PM. And again, that's roadway network wide. It's not any individual road. With the exception of maybe Atwater, because we have to come down to Atwater.
That's at peak hour, whatever.
Those are the peak hours. So those for an R&D facility, think of it almost basically like an office. A lot of trips in the AM peak hour, a lot of trips in the PM. The rest of the day, it's kind of lulled out because everybody's already at work. The rest of the day is some people will go to lunch, some people come back. Your deliveries. There'll be some people come in late. There will be generally flexible hours. Not everybody's going to start at 8 a.m. But the rest of the day is kind of a mix between that. And I will say that the numbers here are based on the square footage. So for Mass DOT purposes, once through their permit process, they require us to use the square footage number where we actually know our employee count. If you use the employee number, these numbers are a lot less. The traffic study does go over what those employee numbers are. So for instance, that daily number of 2,800 drops dramatically below 2,000 if I just use it by employee. But again, for Mass DOT purposes, they want to know what the full day is under a square footage sense. And we do that because each R&D facility is a little bit different. The square footage might be different for those facilities. If you know the number of employees, that really is controlling the amount of trips you work. How many people are coming to work? How many people are leaving? So that's really the sense of that. Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, mine's a simple question. These are, what we're looking at right now is you're projecting out, correct? Projective of all those factors, this is the projected count.
Yeah, and what I've said before is this is also a conservative number, not just because we're using square footage count as opposed to employees, but also not taking into account things like remote work yet, which have really increased post-COVID. Not including, we've assumed all of this is vehicular traffic. We don't have any credit for people who might bike, no credit for people who might walk, no credit for people who might take transit, although transit's a little different because Train station's not exactly close, so you're probably gonna end up finding another way to be in a wheeled vehicle getting here from the train station, even if it is by bicycle. Now from there, that's distributed across the roadway network using the US, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Two quick questions. Could you define what peak hour range is, and if this includes service trucks, deliveries, et cetera?
Of course. So this is the general vehicle traffic. So it's anything that would, because it's based, the manual itself is based on traffic counts, it does not necessarily decipher, at least in this number, whose truck, whose, how many are UPS trucks, but there will be UPS trucks. How many are just regular vehicles, but there will be regular vehicles. You can actually break it out by truck. It's obviously a percentage of that number. But RD facility, we're talking, it's mostly obviously passenger vehicles. But it's inclusive of everything. It's not necessarily calling out who's who as they enter the site. It's the two counts on the roadway. But it's usually driveway specific, so you can get a good idea of exactly what that square footage or what that employee count will actually do. There was a second question there, I'm sorry.
Just what the parameters of peak hours are?
Sure. The purpose of peak hour in this sense, there's no set hour of the day. It's gonna obviously change based on any individual location, but the way the manual works is what would generally be considered the adjacent peak hour traffic of the adjacent roadway. So for here, it's assuming that you're in the worst hour of the day of your traffic on the roadway adjacent, which for an RD facility kind of lines up with the roadway that you would be around, because it's general commuter traffic. People who want to work in the morning, people who are leaving that. So we're talking about that 7:30 or 7 to 9 range, but we're talking about 1 hour within that. And then 4 to 6 PM, but 1 hour within that. So it's not 4 to 6, it's 4:30 to 5:30 or 4:45 to 5:45.
And is this, I'm sorry, is this the site trip from Cell Signaling's project?
Yes,
So this is the additional trips?
this is the additional trips for, again, the whole roadway network, and we're going to talk about that part in the next.
Plus these other projects you're talking about, right?
This is just cell signal.
40B. Oh,
So the
this
40B
doesn't
is its
include-
own number.
Okay.
It's included in our study,
Yeah.
but it's separate from this particular.
Thank you.
So your study will show what the current traffic count is this hour too without your project? Is that included in here?
Yes, we show with and without it. So, and that's the comparison. We'll get, and those will be in a couple of slides as well.
Just, can I,
Go ahead.
just to clarify, so you, on the prior slide had the additional increases in growth. So those are all additions to the current.
Yes,
So
so when we're,
the status quo includes transit from Essex to the high school in the morning and the daily traffic in and out of the MAC. That's considered to be your baseline already?
Yeah.
Okay.
so we take our trips and we distribute across the roadway network through all the different ways of signal intersections that we've talked about for the study area. That's based upon US Census Bureau's Journey to Work for the most recent year available. I believe it's the time of the study. I think they've updated it by a year or so now since the study started, but 2017 to 2019. So some people get the mailer in the mail every year. It tells you, asks you a bunch of questions, and you answer them. And we can project out for each individual town how many responses we have about where people work, historically, what are the trends for that town. So from Manchester, we can pretty much get information from if you live here or you work here, vice versa, where are you traveling from to go to work or to work. So from here, we chose the top 25 towns for residents, for workers in Manchester where they typically live. It comes out to about, I believe it was 70% of the overall, represents 70% of the overall workforce. The other 30% are all individually towns that are less than 0.5% or so. So they're not going to change the number that much at that point. And that's just because we can't do 500. Some of them are in Texas, realistically, because some people telecommute, right? So, but what that does is we're able to project the traffic over the individual roadways. So for the peak hours, we have phase 1, and the next slide will be phase 2. This is the actual traffic that we would be adding to the individual roadways from our site. So on phase 1, we have the benefit of being right next to 128. The overwhelming majority of the traffic from the site is obviously just going to use 128. It's right there. So how do we project that out? Well, with that journey to work data, we know where people live. They're going to obviously work here. How do they get it here? Waze is going to tell them. So that's how we're projecting it out. Waze or Google Earth or something, other program that tells me exactly where to go. and what's the quickest travel time to get there. So that's how we're projecting out the roadway, because most likely, even if you're not using this every day to go to work, you're probably on your car, even if it's just to find out where the cops are hiding. Behind the trees. Not saying that that's what I do. But under phase one, each individual roadway, especially when you're talking about the town part, the center of town, which is to the south here. Individual roads like Pleasant and Lincoln, or just go directly into the town, right next to town hall, right here, this intersection outside. We're talking about under phase one, the largest volume in any one direction. I believe over there is 9 cars in the worst hour of the day. Put that in perspective, that's 1 car every 6 minutes on average. So inside the actual town, it's not really that noticeable. And a lot of that has to do with, once you get into Manchester Center, unless you're the small amount of people in Manchester, there's not a big population that would be happening to work at CST. Most people are living in other places as they come to work here.
So
And we
I'm
have
sorry,
128 between us and the actual center of town.
this is the additional,
Additional
Further-
traffic that you would see on the roadway based on what's there today. So phase one, there'll be a phase 2 slide, the off volumes are actually gonna get a little larger, not too much larger, but. And as you can see, the numbers for Route 28. It doesn't really point to that. It's fine. 128 is obviously where you see the majority of that traffic. So phase one, 50 cars in, 10 cars out from the Boston side, 60 cars. Towards Gloucester, 30 in the AM, just under 30 in the PM. So that is the majority of your traffic is on 128.
Can I be very basic about this?
Sure.
Would you mind actually going up to that screen and describing what
I was gonna use this, but this thing doesn't really.
doesn't work? Yeah, make it
Don't
work
touch the
better.
screen though.
Technology.
Yeah,
Don't
touch
touch
the
it.
screen.
Is it gonna skip slides?
Welcome, if you can't see, to grab a chair and bring it around.
Thanks.
Okay. Yes, don't touch the screen.
Don't touch it.
Pleasant Street, Lincoln, and then down to the intersection, obviously right outside the building right here, is kind of where we're talking about here on School Street. So for these locations, AM and PM under phase one, the largest volume that we're seeing on any one direction for any one roadway, 9 new vehicles in that worst hour of the AM. 8 or so in the PM, right up to close. With the majority of that traffic being on 128.
So
Again,
this is 9 more vehicles than we currently have.
than you currently have. So again, about
if you never
one new
came-
car every 6 minutes.
1 car every 6 minutes. That's all we're gonna get more.
Well, phase one, it does get a little larger phase 2, so I'm not gonna skip that one. I'm gonna make sure.
Well, it's 9 cars in an hour is what you're saying, which is different than 1 car every 6 minutes, because they might all,
You're right.
worst
They might
case,
all
they
go
might
at
all
once.
come in the same
And then
5
the other 59
minutes.
minutes, there's no worries.
They might come in 9 minutes.
So-
There might be
and-
1 minute.
It seems implausible to me. I can have 1 car every 6 minutes.
I think it's 9 cars in an hour, and they might
9
all
cars
come in
an hour,
9
and
minutes.
You've got hundreds of people coming there in the morning and then
They're not coming to
They're coming
Manchester.
up 128.
they're coming up 128 and they're getting off that exit and they're
But
going
that's
in.
50 cars up 128.
Yeah, can you talk about 128?
Again, the key benefit that we have from the site is 128 is right next to us. So when you talk about where we get down here, right to this intersection, let's say out the door. Other than Manchester itself, there was almost no reason why you're passing through that intersection. Unless you actually live right around this area.
And Michael Combe goes to work late.
But if you come from Gloucester, again, you can come to the back road and come down to the center of town, but most of Gloucester, you can just take 128. And that's the thing, you have a benefit of where Manchester is comparatively from everything else. It's up against the water. There's only so many roads in and they only go so many places. Gloucester and Beverly. That's basically it. Otherwise, you would have been on 128. And that's where we get the benefit. There are a little bit more going to the north, towards SA Stitchwich. Again, we're in that 14 to 15 range for one direction. And again, phase one, phase two will obviously be a larger number. Not to that right now. So this is the aggregate, phase 1 and 2, so full build. So even then, center of town.
So-
Ice,
Sorry, could you just point to the Pleasant and School Street intersection on those dashes there?
Pleasant
That
School,
one right
without trying to,
there. Uh-huh,
Pleasant School, if you can see the red,
right there, okay.
that's Pleasant School.
So an additional 12 cars.
Well, 15 and include both directions, but again, even 15, 1 on average every 4 minutes. So, and it's the nature of, there's not much to go to once you get that 128 in terms of an R&D facility, which is regional in nature to drive traffic. a residential, there might be more need to come to the center of town, post office, town hall. More restaurant access on a daily basis for all three meals, let alone what an RV facility would you consider like an office complex would be. And again, most of that traffic centered towards the highway, Route 128. And that's just where, again, journey to work data kind of points us, and what ways Google Earth and other travel timelines kind of point us to how people would actually get there, what's the fastest. People will tend to always find the fastest. You look like you asked.
Well, maybe you're gonna get to this, but it seems like cell signaling has other facilities that you must know actual. And you're right beside 128 with only you can only get on one direction from your Kings Grant location, right? So that might be, but have you ever done, like, that to me would, like, how many people get on 128 at peak hour from that location? How many cars do you have? You have how many
Actual
people working
traffic
there, and
count.
how does that compare to this?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. We haven't done a traffic study, I'll just say that. With the advent of COVID, our on-site employee count is significantly reduced. If you were to go there during any day of the week, it's probably 30 to 40% of our normal population, because there are so many people that are working remotely.
Why don't you describe what the practices are in terms of coming to work and leaving to work? It's not necessarily shift work where everybody's punching in at 7. I think that might help explain.
I mean, we're one shift, 5 days a week. My staff, for instance, comes in at 7, they leave at 3:30. Most scientists are, they come in anywhere between 8 and 9, and they leave somewhere around 4 to 5. We have a couple of departments that work till 8 for shipping our product.
So it's staggered.
Staggered. Yep.
And again, from there, and the one, issue with we got lucky that TSP is really a couple hundred ranks down. The only difference would be for a study for that is location is still everything, and depending on pending location, and we know the location of this one. Different ways to get in and out, different proximity to, even the water, how much could possibly be past it, where there is a little bit more to Beverly and Salem, Marblehead area going that way, because the population wise compared to Manchester. That and the population is not necessarily 100% transferring to this location, which means a new employee force generally might have a completely different way of getting where they live. So I'll have to compare it for that way. Where the trip count itself, how many total trips, might be something you might be able to pull from that. How they get there would be completely different, just because unless the employees are the same. It's hard to project something that I'm trying to give you the typical thing that hopefully would be the same maybe 20 years out, and all the employees maybe have retired since. So again, from there, we did forecast out the future traffic operations are both in the no build condition, but this is without us, what you see in the screen now. This is what you will see out there today without us being. And each of the intersections ranked on an A to F scale. So I always try to preface this, LOSF, level service, does not necessarily mean failing. It is a threshold of delay per vehicle. That's what it is. It's 50 seconds per vehicle on average for a delay of any one approach. And that's for this, all unsignalized locations, it's the stop sign approach, basically. The signal might be a little different, just an average of everybody. School Street's not gonna really experience any delay anywhere except for the 4-way at Pleasant. So from that, again, that 50 seconds level threshold, to give you a general idea of what 50 seconds does mean, I know it sounds remedial, but if you're 3 cars back in a queue, doesn't sound like a lot of queue. Takes you a couple seconds every time you're pulling up as that next car. Once you hit the back of the queue till you pass the stop line, that amount of time, that takes me a minute and a half to get out of my driving sometimes. And I'm in Raleigh, I'm like too much different. So that doesn't necessarily mean failing, it just means just the level of delay at that intersection.
Is that Lincoln? Is F Lincoln?
Yeah, right now we have level service C's up at Atwater, both AM and PM. The ramps are kind of a mix. It's D at the southbound ramps, F at the northbound ramps. So it just means it's gonna get greater than 50 seconds of delay getting out of that ramp on average during that worst hour of the day. Rest of the day, it might be completely free flow. It's just, we're talking about the worst hours, because that's really gonna control how we look at mitigation. Especially compared to our site, which is driven by those peak hours, because we're a commuter, business. And then level service F's in the AM and D in the PM for the Lincoln and Pleasant intersections. Pleasant intersections along School Street. So. Full build, there's obviously some increases or some more degradation in the level service. D to E up in Atwater. The F's are staying, for instance, the northbound ramp, they do trip the F threshold at 50 seconds at the southbound ramps. Pleasant and Lincoln pretty much stay the same in terms of the level of service. The delay will obviously go up to add one car to them, right? So, but we've already established that there's actually not going to be that much new traffic total at those locations. So in a broader sense, and this is kind of the layout of what peer reviewer has in his report, is individual, what we'll call the elevated level service locations. So Atwater during the evening hour. Operating level service E, less than 50 seconds of average delay per vehicle. But what we call the BC ratio, that's the volume versus the actual, what the road can actually handle, the capacity, it's still less than one. We still reserve capacity on that road. We can still fit 4 cars and it's not being fully congested. At Atwater. So it's, again, that's a minimum amount of delay trying to get out of Atwater onto a mainline roadway because you have a stop sign.
And
Something you would see is that
it's more congested in the evening because most people are making the left turn out of Atwater across traffic.
yeah, and in our sense, again, this is the build out condition. Look, this is with us. We're not a meeting facility, our people are for that kind of thing. Even if we could talk about the map. The map at this time of day, it's kind of a mix between in and out, whereas in the morning, it's mostly probably people coming in, or the gym before that. So you would expect that one to be much better in the AM, which it is, which is why we have it highlighted here. So the orange again, Mass UT locations, the southbound ramps trip the 50-second threshold for F, with about 60 seconds of delay on average in the morning, about 85 on average in the PM peak hour. Again, still reserve capacity exists, but we're still well below 1 on that capacity ratio. And discussion with MassDOT, again, we had coordination with MassDOT throughout the process. That MassDOT sees for a little about an hour of a day, that being like that, that's not a concern. Especially on a ramp location, that's no different than mostly any other ramp that they have for some other stop sign. Sorry, go ahead.
I must be thinking of it backwards. So I'm not understanding why the northbound is more backed up than the southbound.
Northbound getting off the ramp would be people coming from the Boston area as opposed to the Gloucester area. So you would always expect more traffic to be coming from that direction, hitting the stop sign, which is why the northbound ramps will have the heavier delay.
So it's coming off 128 in the morning.
Yeah.
From Beverly,
Boston,
Yeah,
Danvers,
from-
Peabody.
Peabody,
So,
and waiting at the stop sign on School Street
To turn
to
left.
turn left.
and
While
that's-
the Essex parents are coming to the high school.
and that's the same without us and with us. It's,
Okay,
that
so
one's
I'm
always a little worse.
Picturing the ramp, not the stop sign.
Right.
So
Well,
you
it's-
mean stop signs here?
Yeah, well, there's a stop sign now at the end of the ramp to turn left.
You didn't know that?
No. I'm still backwards. I'll have to ponder this one.
I'll go back one. Northbound ramps, so people coming from Boston, coming up the ramp, in the stop sign across, what will be the cornerstone church.
Yes.
Whereas
That's
southbound,
the bad.
coming from Gloucester, you're coming up right up against the map.
But why would self-signaling impact that at all?
Of most of our traffic being generated for our employees would still be coming from the west, Boston, the Danvers, the Peabody and stuff.
Okay.
So I have a question. I may have missed this, but
Sure.
have you shown or will you show what all of these intersections, how they rank currently? So that you then show what the impact on top of what we are right now will be?
Sure, and that's what this was kind of pointing out, no build, that's without us.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next slide, Bill, so some of them don't even change.
Yeah.
The label goes up, but the ranking itself doesn't change. And obviously there is some increase in some of them, again, not necessarily what we'll call it degraded completely, but, and then this side was highlighting kind of those key areas that we want to talk about, direct items of the less substantial part of the period as well. So in the northbound ramps, and we're gonna talk more about that actually, obviously later, but that's the one where we do see the elevated levels of delay. So that's the ones that we're going after, really for offset mitigation. And we've already had discussions on MassDOT about that, what that mitigation will look like, again, being their location. And may have the ultimate say of what actually happens on their particular roadway. And then going down towards Pleasant and Lincoln, we do show web service F. It's a condition though that's very limited of change versus where there's no build condition. So whether you have this or not, there's obviously a small increase in the delay, but overall, that's not really changing to what's actually already happening at those locations. And being the locations that they are and how they're currently situated geometrically, how wide they are, where the houses are at the back of the lot. The limited amount of mitigation you can actually do, that would be reasonable on CST as a mitigation item. For that amount of delay, they were increasing, not much. There's a position of, we're not really much change, so there's not really anything that we are providing, documented to provide at those locations, to alter the situation.
Can you sort of translate mitigation with Mass DOT at the northbound ramp? What, can you
Oh, yeah,
be explicit about what that means?
we'll have a whole sign on that.
Okay.
It might be, it's part of the next two slides, so. From here, we are looking to do some offsite traffic mitigation work. So at school and Atwater itself, so this is, it's not our driveway, but it's really where all of our traffic is coming out onto School Street. There will be resurfacing being done as part of the general site on Atwater or other utility and other things that are happening along the roadway. But with that, updating some of the markings at the end of that roadway, so to actually define out where the lanes are without roadway widening. We have wetlands, definitely wetlands on the north side, and depending on who's going to flag that day, there's probably wetlands on the other side for a good length of that water as well. And updating the signage that's there. Right now, the stop sign's pretty big now. Something we can update, make it more reflective, high visibility from a distance. So at least you can, looking to maybe even do object markers on the other side. It is a dead end theoretically at School Street. And at night, not a lot of lighting on School Street, so something to enhance that ability to have stop sign seen further. I'll skip over to School Street first before we get to the northbound ramp, but School Street, through our MEPA process, we discussed with MassDOT and the folks at MEPA about extending that buffered bicycle lane that they just put over the highway and extending that up through that one. So that only requires minimal box widening of the roadway, so we're talking just a couple of feet maybe to get it out to the width to do that. That would actually take the lanes and actually narrow them down a little bit as well. So that's also helps in the traffic common sense, so it's a little bit of speed control. Because those lanes really need to be 11 feet wide for that type of roadway. Right now they are wider than that. So we can buy back some of that property we already that's already there pavement wise to get those buffer bike lanes that right now end. They start southbound at State Highway layouts, or actually at the state's property line into town. Northbound, they kind of stop 40 feet short inside the ramp. But we would take that, extending it off obviously to that line and then further out at one itself with there. The bike improvement itself, why we've kind of gone this route is being an R&D facility, the likelihood of one of our employees being a pedestrian, a walker, is very limited. The nearest dwelling outside what's on individual property next door, but it's back door. The office, the small office complex in the middle. The next residential dwelling is a mile away from our facility by walking, one at Water and then down School. And then from there, anything that someone actually might be going to walking lines is even further than that. So the likelihood of us having walkers is very, very, very low. Master T has even defined that roadway as a low potential point. That's directly something on their website that they define the roadway. Whereas biking, on the other hand, a more likelihood of someone from our site actually being biked to the location. So being that the buffer bike lanes are being provided, were provided, Master Chief different itself to cross the bridge, let alone what's south of that now on the town property. it makes sense to us to have that to be a continuation going up the road. And then obviously the school street at 128 northbound ramps, yellow big location. This again has gone through conversations with Mass DOT. They've reviewed our process as part of the MEPA process and have issued generally concurrence with that as part of the MEPA certificate and through our other coordination. That after phase one, the individual operations at the end of the ramp are not, obviously the delay goes up, but not so much unchanged than what you see today after phase one. And so from there, knowing that our trip generation is generally conservative, they were in agreement that we don't necessarily want to necessarily change anything here, for instance, the traffic signal now. Because you're in two phases, you provided us with the opportunity to check what happens after phase one. And at that point, if it's obviously needed, you need to provide that traffic signal as part of phase two before you. And that will be their general concurrence. After they approve it. So with that, we would provide the design for that. That would start the application process with Mass DOT's permit for the phase one occupancy, for the traffic signal to go in at phase two upon Mass DOT agreeing that would happen. And the next slide kind of goes through some of the aspects that might happen with that. So as part of that, we have to go through a warranting process. There's a warranty process already done in this particular traffic study. That information will change obviously following phase one. We'll actually have new traffic data, new traffic counts. The other improvements on the roadway might lower the speed. And I say that because right now, if the speed of the roadway, which I said was 40 miles an hour, if it's less than 40, a traffic signal is not warranted at northbound ramps by federal guidance, which means we cannot.
You cannot what?
We cannot put it in. It's the feds would tell us not to. It would be against the actual federal regulation to put a signal at that location if the speed would have dropped below. So following phase one, we have to do another study for Mass DOT anyways, and we'd be looking at this information again to recheck for warranty. Now, the speed's still greater than 40. And again, the volumes might have changed by then anyways. And therefore now the speed may not matter actually at that point. But it seems that we have to check again, which is why at phase two, we'd be going through this process again to make sure a signal is actually warranted. Warranted doesn't necessarily mean you have to put it in, but it does mean you can't put it in if it's not warranted. So it's the alternates of the. So that will be part of the Mass DOT permit process. We go for it at that location.
Let me ask you a question. Is that, are you talking about a full stop signal or is that the same for a flashing red or yellow?
Red, yellow, green, typical traffic signal.
Typical traffic.
All approaches. All owned and operated after the fact by Mass DOT. They will be the ones who run it after. It's on there. It's there.
So do you make any distinction like the other end of Pleasant Street, at Pine and Pleasant, there's a flashing red in one direction and a flashing yellow in the other way? Is that
This would
one?
be full control, red, yellow, green,
Okay.
red goes, red or response.
At the intersection
Of the
of
northbound.
the ramp from 128 to on School Street.
Yes, and it would wrap in Mill Street while you're at it because the proximity to Mill Street would necessitate that Mill Street gets the same signalization. Just because it's only about 150 feet. But what that does is delay. That's the phase one operations. I actually don't have the full build out of the signal, but when I was talking about level service F before, that level service F drops down to like level service C on the ramp in Mill Street with the signal. So, and a lot of that is just as you would think. It's if you get a green light, as opposed to a stop sign, when you stop, like you wait, you pull up and you stop, you wait, green light, 15 seconds, 12 cars go. And you flush everybody out. And then they don't get green again for another minute. But it flushes everybody out quickly all at once. So that's why the delay stops dramatically with the signal levels.
And when you say it wraps in Mill Street, is that a second signal at Mill Street or how would that?
There would be a separate like overhead arm that has signal heads on it. It would all be directly connected, so
Okay.
they're all gonna be on the same type of operation. It's just a matter of, it's too close to not have it.
Yeah.
We would never put something of that kind of mixed kind of roadway tying in without having signalizing. It's gonna be that close. And Master T would make us if we didn't want to. So they'd say, no, you have to do that.
And no signal in the southbound ramp.
No, because even under a full build scenario, most of our, again, our trips, especially coming off the ramps, are all right turns on the channelized lane. So most of it's just almost, it's not a free movement, it's theoretically yield, but up and down, least amount of traffic turns away. And then onto the ramp, left turn in, It's not stop flow, you're still free flow, you're just waiting for the gap to go. The house is in the gap. So generally still a very beneficial level service, even for the left turn on. So that's why the application asked you to, with a small amount of delay that was gonna happen. And even then, we're not actually even adding traffic to the unit that actually is level service at that location, the southbound ramps. We're just adding traffic to the main line and therefore the gas station. That's it. We actually don't even add traffic to the actual stops because all our cars turn.
So for clarity, so would cars on School Street have to stop?
Yes, but we're gonna, at this kind of location, I would expect the green light is gonna be on School Street 80 to 85% of the time. So every once in a while, let's say there's about 90 seconds between for that time for it to wrap around the entire cycle. Probably like 70 seconds of that's gonna be on School Street. That won't be the exact timing. I don't know exactly what it will be yet, but that's kind of what we're looking at. So for a small amount of period, it will turn red for School Street. Some cars will stop, but even then, traffic study is showing that the operation of School Street on average is still very acceptable level service. So minimal, like 20
Just
seconds or
asking,
less.
we have
is fine.
school buses coming from Essex.
Yep.
And if it gets backed up too much and then backed up at the Pleasant school stop sign. Something for us to think about.
When Mass DOT makes this decision, I mean, I can just, this would be the first stoplight in Manchester. So that's got a little bit of a sense of, I'll speak to myself, it's like, it's kind of a change. When the stop flashing red at Walker and Pine went in, there are still people who don't honor it. So it was a big deal. But what does Mass DOT, and I understand, I'm hearing you say that Mass DOT kind of makes this decision. And then would they actually do actual counts as opposed to yours are based on your methodology in those standards? But would they actually do real traffic counts to see if there's,
Yeah, so after phase one, and again, this would be us, again, TEC would be doing the study for MassDOT. We'll obviously have new traffic counts that we'll just do from actual counting cars. From there, we'll know exactly how many of those cars are our people at CST at that point, because we're after phase one. And we can basically, knowing the square footage of what we have now, we can get a pretty good estimate of what it will be for our traffic. Real life traffic, not just projection, for what phase two will be, because it's gonna be generally the same proportional square footage employed at that point, once we get in there. It's our whole facility at that point to know what the numbers are. And that will be projected on the traffic count. That will be just collected just like a normal traffic count would. Mass UC will, again, it's a permanent part of the local city process. For all that to go through. We have a strict guidelines of exactly what that study has to include.
Are you, would you be counting or are you projecting bikes and ped traffic? I'm thinking about vehicular and bicycle and ped conflict areas, and you're, the traffic light on the one hand for the northbound traffic is addressing that, but anytime the vehicles are turning left, that puts a cyclist more in danger if they're crossing through that intersection. So how do you deal with the increased, left turning and the impact on, that's
Sure.
quite a throughway for a cyclist.
Any single design that we do, especially something that has bike lanes and the actual physical bike facility, will include all the necessary items to include the bikes and the peds into what we're doing. So whether it's peds and obviously crosswalks with measuring time and stuff like that. Bikes, depending on the location, doing this even a lot more, actually doing bike specific signal heads that have slightly different phasing maybe than the main line. So the different size or different positions to be right there for the bike to be able to see based on here where we have a bike lane, we know where the biker's gonna be, especially because they're also not turning on the ramps.
Right, I
Shouldn't be turning on the ramps.
appreciate that. You're talking then about dealing with the kind of, if you're coming out of town, it's sort of the left side where the northern traffic is, but you're not signaling the other side of the ramp. So
Well, we wouldn't be signaling the ramp itself, because there won't be, well, no vehicular signal, really.
Vehicular signal.
There wouldn't be bike from the ramp itself, because there'd be no bikes on the ramp.
Maybe I had
School Street
misunderstood.
itself-
Are you talking about, I thought you said you were only gonna signalize one side of the ramp, only the northbound traffic, not the southbound
Well, the
traffic.
northbound ramps, so
Northbound
that's,
ramps, yeah,
that's the actual full intersection, that's Mill Street, the
Okay.
ramp itself, and School
Okay.
Street in both directions at
Okay.
that location.
and then are you talking about adding crosswalks and pedestrian beacons at everywhere you cross a ramp at 128?
Where the sidewalk is already provided, so right now, I believe at that location, it's just across Mill Street. Is the only one that has a sidewalk, there's no sidewalk on the west side. If we were doing the southbound ramp, we would be having all the stuff crossing each of the four lanes of the Echo, where that's the two channelized lanes and the two main lanes.
So it seems like if you're talking about phase two, and I realize that's down the road a bit, but at that point, you'd really have to deal with the pedestrian and bike traffic with the, making safe crossings getting across the ramp for heads and bikes.
Well, yeah, again, we'll be providing those facilities for where the facility exists currently, so, because we would have to. There would be no way we would ever even design it if it didn't include to accommodate the stuff that's already there. So there's a sidewalk on the east side, we will provide full pedestrian accommodations for that sidewalk to the signal. There are bike lanes on School Street. Even if we were adding them as part of what they're already there, we would be incorporating those into the signal through not just individual heads, but detection as well. We'll have detection on the roadways where the bike is approaching, it's gonna know the bike is. And we will provide the necessary time to go with that bike. So, and where the bike, the markings will also support where that biker needs to be. That's how we could set up anything, regardless of location. Other than the actual, what we're called the physical offsite mitigation measures, the component is similar to the other site that has just down the road. We'll be incorporating a lot of transportation demand management options for both sustainability and vehicle reduction. Again, the vehicle reduction part of these is not included in our trip generation, so everything that we've shown you so far, you can expect it to be less. And if sometimes it is simple as some of the things on here that sound really simple, but it does reduce the amount of traffic. So we have on-site cafeteria provided. How many less people are gonna be going out to lunch and now taking up another vehicle terminal road? Direct deposit for employees, another one. How many trips are no longer going to the bank every 2 Thursdays? Whatever it is. Providing the help facilities that we are also just next to the back. How many of those trim trips are gonna be shared now? People going to the back to the gym and working next to this. So just again, overall less traffic on the roadway from the numbers we're actually showing in the report. Just because we are able to do other things on the site. Providing connections to the actual trail. Where our employees can use the trail. That's from there. Bike racks to get people to bike if they can, and provide those bike facilities offsite to get it.
Are showers provided in the building? I assume it's a lead building.
There are, yes.
There's shower. Thank you. I missed that one.
But again, yes, promoting biking.
Yeah, that's why I asked that.
How many more
Yeah.
people would bike? They just have to use the shower after they bike to work. Should tell my boss. Oh crap, I'm and again, one of the last ones in here, the traffic monitoring program. So this is actually, we're doing this anyways, but we are required to do this part of the NEPA process in Master Chief process. We get the benefit of we'd be doing this with the phase one, work with the traffic signal anyways, but a monitoring permit that has us look at a bunch of these locations again after the fact, both after phase one and after phase two, to see where we are. And through the NEPA process, we're bound to potentially do other offsite mitigation measures in coordination with NEPA if we hit thresholds that are 10% more than what we said they were going to be in the tracks. So if we were wrong, NEPA will make us go back to use on the limits. We don't think that's going to happen. We think we're way over conservative on our numbers, but it's just something that we are providing as part of our package, just so we can check with the and with the state that we are doing what we said we would. And that includes our adherence also to TDM measures themselves and where we are, how many people are we getting to cover? Are we getting to use EV charging stations? That's more of a sustainability thing, that's more of a car reduction, but the things like that to make sure that we're on par, with other businesses there. Sorry.
On the traffic monitoring, is there a way that you'll be counting bikes and peds on that count?
Yes, I mean, our traffic counts, they count everything, bikes,
Okay.
heads, most of them are done with like the camera system now.
Yeah,
Not-
okay.
I
So
always
you're gonna see the
preface this when I say
scooters
this out
and
loud.
everything else.
Cameras aren't good enough to give you a complete number, it's purely like shapes and objects, but it can tell pets, it can tell. It can tell the vehicle classification, it will know if it's a certain size truck compared to one that might even be a foot shorter in a different federal class. It will know. So we get all that information out of those counts. And that helps us be, even like, again, truck size, helps us design like the turning radii and what we expect on certain roads, it's just for those. So it's very, very helpful, especially now that we're using more of a camera technology as opposed to the wire using the roadway. Which is pretty cool. So from here, there's a couple of open comments in Weston Sampson's letter. Again, most of the comments, I believe, at this point are no action needed beyond what we already have. After the first peer review, we submitted that separate single document that talked about the transportation demand management measures and the offsite mitigation. But from here, kind of what's generally still open, although we believe we do have a sponsor for that, but we will at least talk through is they were talking about the feasibility of the bike lanes on School Street that we are proposing. I think the original way the comment was written was not understand that there actually is, we are expecting to widen the roadway a little bit to make that happen. So the roadway is right now just a little bit narrow, especially if you get about 200, 300 feet beyond the ramps north. Just a little bit of widening, we can open up enough to get the bike lane and using the existing roadway width that's there was a question about, in a couple different locations about why not sidewalks? And again, I think I spoke to this a little bit earlier of our facility itself and what we would project pedestrian coverage for our facility. It's generally limited, being an R&D facility and being so far from any other destination that we could possibly go in, other than maybe the farm stand, and even then, that's only on that one, there's not even on School Street at that point. So from there, the bikes lanes seem more practical for our particular use. And from there, it also does, again, tie into a recent Mass DOT improvement that's already there. So it's something that we're not just putting bike lanes in the middle of nowhere, they are connected to other bike lanes going towards the same path. There is discussion about the signalization of School Street. Again, we talked a little bit already, a good amount about that. Through the coordination with MassDOT and the MEPA review, that's generally been accepted by MassDOT for this location. It's something that they, because of the way it's been structured, again, even if we do bring phase twos, that they are able to own and operate that signal after the fact. Otherwise, they would have just told us no already, if that was the case. And then there's discussion about the sidewalk connectivity, which might be more of, the question come up about it, but the sidewalk connectivity, we'll call site adjacent. So the actual driveway out to Atwater next to the MAC. And where we are compared to Beaver Dam. But from there, I think one of the things that maybe Matt will talk about it more is, I believe we are going to extend the sidewalk as is out to Atwater. I know Matt might want to talk more about when he gets to the Beaver Dam part about how that driveway is no longer here, necessarily being used the same way or at all in the updated version. But from there, that generally overviews what we're still kind of left open with. Weston Sampson. These will be slightly expanded upon, but these will generally be the responses that end up in our response letter to their second peer review. But with that, that's kind of the end, at least of the traffic overview. But I'll leave it to questions. In their questions.
From Weston Sampson, but I do have a question about the about the traffic on site. And maybe Weston Sampson can speak to this about whether there's a conflict between pedestrians and vehicles. And then the other thing is, we were there today and the vehicles leaving the MAC are in a hurry. And I assume that at the end of the day, the CST employees are also in a hurry. So that intersection between, as you come from the MAC and come out the main entrance exit of cell signaling, seems to me to be worth a discussion about whether there's a stop sign for both or for one of those. And people do walk. We saw one walking today. down that road, not just perhaps Celtic Mill employees won't walk, but there are people who walk down that road, so,
There's a sign on that road that says, please be careful.
please be
Yeah.
careful of pedestrians,
Lots of bike,
but,
bikers
mean-
and pedestrians.
I can speak to a little bit about that right now. I believe there will be a stop sign at the end of our driveway onto Atwater. That would only be natural. Although I think what you're getting at is, are you stopping Atwater as well? At the actual driveway, so it's almost like an always stop at that location. I don't know if that's what you were getting at. And I
I'm
always
not
think,
a traffic planner, I see that as without a stop sign for somebody,
yeah, our driveway will be under stop control. An always stop, sort of stopping at Atwater at the same time. Most likely, and again, this is me off the cuff, but most likely would not meet the federal warrants for a stop sign at that location. A federal warrant for a stop sign volume wise would need to be 300 cars basically on Atwater for 8 hours of the day, with 200 on the adjacent side street, which is, I'm gonna take a wild guess, not happening. Because there's not even 300 cars on School Street for a lot of parts of the day. So, in a sense of that, the only other real way you're gonna trip that warrant is for sight lines coming out of the driveway onto Atwater, which I believe at that location is pretty clear. So it doesn't mean people aren't stopping, but it just means the certain rules similar to a signal that we have to meet to do always stops are high threshold, and that's to stop signs from just going in random places where they're just gonna get ignored. So we would really, my guess is at this point, Atwater itself would not warrant a stop sign. But again, our
need a
driveway,
stop sign at the end of Atwater,
Atwater at our driveway,
oh, at your driveway,
where the conflict point's
it
gonna
could be
happen.
stoptional.
But again, our driveway onto
I'm
Atwater
kidding.
itself will have.
Stoptional, that's the, in front of
Can we
them,
ask questions,
yeah,
Ken?
absolutely.
So that was a massive amount of information. I actually read this thing and I'm glad you're here. But there is an action plan. It's gonna be for phase one, day one. What measures are you gonna do from the northbound exit from 128 to School Street to Atwater? And on day two, which is phase two, what is the plan gonna be? Actually, if you would open up a plan and just show us what that might be.
Well, there you go.
And that goes online?
Are you talking on site or are you?
No, I'm talking about what, you guys gotta open on day one, and when I'm gonna come off of, I'm going to work, self-signaling, I'm gonna be at that exit, I'm now northbound exit, what am I gonna see when I get onto the intersection of School and the exit? Anything?
So
Just a stop sign?
For phase one, day one, the conditions at each of the ramps will be exactly the same as they are today, in terms of traffic control. There'll be stop signs at the end of the ramps, or yield if you're on the right turn, so lanes.
It's not warranted by all your criteria.
It may be warranted, but again, warranted doesn't mean do, it just means you can't do if it's not warranted. So,
Can't do it, it's not warranted.
so in a sense, of just general traffic operations for the Master T location, Master T does not see after phase one, each of those locations generally being a problem. For again, the short amount of time of the day, it's gonna be a problem. If that. So what we'll see at day one for phase one, there will be obviously improvements to Atwater, whether it's the resurfacing, new pavement markings at the end of Atwater, for its intersection of School, new stop sign there. Again, there's a stop sign now, but it's pretty dated out. And then any of the other on-site related improvements that are on the actual CST site. And then in addition to that, again, the buffered bike lanes from the ramps up to Atwater, that's phase one, day one. In place.
I'm just gonna stop for a second. Gail, you have your hand up. Sorry.
Yes, would you please ask Sam to release his screen? You're all the size of a postage stamp.
Thanks. Okay.
Pretty short.
Thanks, Gail.
Thank you.
And would you also do
Um,
phase two, what it looks
Yep,
like?
I will. Here we go.
Thanks.
Are we good? We good?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're good.
we're good, much better.
And then phase two, day one, obviously everything that's already happened that we just talked about phase one, but at that point, again, upon the agreement of Mass UT, the traffic signal at the northbound ramps. With another full traffic study that happens before that, That's run through Master DEP's permit process. Whether they want, are warranted to do so, and if are warranted, do they even agree that it's built? Based on their, they've, at this point, basically said that we would agree that a big unit from their needed. But to wait till that phase, because at this point, the traffic on the site just may be much lower than what we're projecting. And they don't want to put themselves in a position to maintain something that they can actually have to do. At least at phase one.
Okay.
All
Could
right,
you just
let's-
say something again? Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. So phase one, day one, you said it's all gonna look the same, but then I thought I heard you talk about extension of bike lanes.
Well, I said, look the same at the actual ramp intersection.
End of the ramp,
And
okay, but you are in day
then
one,
going north from there.
Yeah.
The bike lanes extending out at Atwater,
okay,
improvements at Atwater at school,
Got
the markings and signage.
Okay.
We'll be resourcing it.
Commission
So,
widening the street or recapturing some of the paved surface already?
both.
Both.
The roadway itself will just be a little bit wider, but a lot of the pavement that's already there, the width itself will be
Restripe it to define the travel lane?
So let's, we can continue to ask questions. Let's let, Wes and Sampson, weigh in. That may clarify some things for us. Darren, you should be able to share.
The host is.
Yeah, I just did it. I'm sorry.
And we don't have a slide deck actually, because we have, just as kind of noted, we have fairly limited comments on the traffic study, and we'll be talking about fiscal impacts as well. I guess just to check in on this timing before we get started, do we have 15, 20 minutes?
this is important.
Great, okay, just wanted to verify. So, good evening, I'm Darren Kirshen from Weston and Sampson. I'm a team leader in environmental engineering. I'm going to introduce my colleague, Doug Osler, as well, who will be presenting on our traffic study findings. So first, I'm just going to provide an overview of how we came to this peer review and the steps we've engaged with the applicant and the planning board. So our first hearing attendance was on March 11th, where the applicant provided a thorough overview of the project. We were then reviewed during our initial peer review, about 10 different bylaw areas for the site plan and special permit, including traffic and fiscal impacts. On April 12th, we issued our first initial peer review memo, which was issued to the planning board and the applicant. And then from there, we had follow-up on May 21st from the applicant. We got a response to comments. And then we've subsequently, on June 6th, issued a memo responding just again to traffic, which is the topic of this evening, and fiscal impacts. So that's sort of an overview schedule-wise of where we've been on the project. As the applicant indicated at 2 weeks ago's hearing on May 28th, as they represented the project to the planning board. This is a large redevelopment of this quarry. There's about 2,800 feet of loose driveway that's planned internally with sidewalks and connections. There's surface parking lots. There's, again, the two phases here that everyone's familiar with. We did the site walk earlier today, so I won't go into detail of what the actual project is specifically, but and then it's very helpful that Sam's provided a very detailed, comprehensive study on where the traffic is needed. So yeah, we initially had a January 2023 TNC traffic impact analysis. That was part of our initial review. And we listed this out in our memo from last week. Then we got follow-up items from the traffic portion of the applicant's design team, which was a full traffic management component study, and then a traffic impact analysis and parking study that were revisions from earlier files that we received. And those are the basis of the limited comments that we now have open. We plan just to highlight the open comments we have on traffic, and then we'll move into our fiscal impact study, which we had no action items, but we just wanted to cover that topic area as well. But we'll probably pause after traffic just to stay consistent topic wise, and then kind of come back to the fiscal impact as our last topic area. So from there, I'll transfer it to Doug. Do you want to on the laptop, or do you want to speak to? Sure, it's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Doug Osler, Weston Sampson, Senior Project Engineer, and done many different studies similar to this, as well as reviewing them. I've been on both sides of the aisle there. Just to mention my experience in looking at traffic studies. I will mention, thank you, the traffic study was done in a fair manner. The analytical and procedures were common to the industry standard. Things were fairly normal there. And the questions, some of the original comments included some clarifications, asking some questions which they provided. There are still, I believe, 4 open comments. Some of them are just to provide possibility for discussion, which Sam has already brought up regarding delays and how that goes down, as well as a couple recommendations, as he mentioned, about sidewalks. Probably proceed first to last on those. So the first comment was not necessarily an action item for the town, but this was responding to the potential plan to widen School Street where it is too narrow to add bike lanes, as well as to restrict what's there. And after widening to add full bike lanes. It was just more noting that where the bike lanes exist currently, the majority of that portion, there is a sidewalk on one side. Where it will be widening, there is currently no sidewalk. Not necessarily asking that we add sidewalk, but just pointing out, if we're dedicating bike lanes, it could also be striped as just a more generic shoulder that would not necessarily legally preclude pedestrians versus bicyclists. It's a little bit of bureaucracy, but just noting that could be considered if it goes ahead with bike lanes. You know, it's a decision for MassDOT at that point, but that was the reasoning behind that comment.
Can I ask a question on that one? So would you rather wait and save it to the end?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to, on the April 12th memo, you were talking about complete streets improvements and recommending that. Are you on the same topic here, or?
Yes, it's the same topic. We left the original comment as it was, and then I refined the comment as I received feedback. I was not aware the first go around that there was actually going to be widening of the road. And I used the term complete streets more as a generic, consider the context of the roadway and more of a regional plan as it connects to it. So it wasn't so specific, but it is talking about the same thing. So dedicating the bikes versus being a little more permissive in striping for bikes and pedestrians.
Thank you.
The second open comment was more of just noting the areas, as the bylaw had stated, that it should be discussed and considered the potential improvements, not necessarily requiring all of the improvements, but a discussion of the locations where the average delay per stopped vehicle increases by 10 seconds from the background condition to the build condition. The no build condition to the build condition was a terminology that was used. So the original comment just noted the instances of the locations. We don't have a specific action item, but we have that open so that if there are questions about any specific intersection, those of you on the board are in charge of asking those questions and feeling what's appropriate. It could be a start to that discussion. If anything more is required, we talked about, but we do not have any specific recommendation for the board to require. The third open comment, as we have, deals with sidewalk connectivity. I will read the specific bylaw just to provide that background. It says all development and redevelopment shall provide for pedestrian and bicyclist connections on the property and allow for possible future connections with adjoining properties, where deemed appropriate by the planning board or SPGA. So this comment was dealing with Internal to the site, there are sidewalks as appropriate, connecting to the parking garage and surface parking into the buildings. So we had no issue with that, and that was a separate bylaw, but this is specifically saying if Atwater, if somebody else or the town or somebody builds sidewalks, or if for some reason there's bike lanes added to that roadway, we'd want to have connections to that from the site, if appropriate. So in this case, Sam mentioned that the nearest house residence was approximately a mile away from the site, and noted that as a reason that it was not necessarily appropriate to require a sidewalk directly to Atwater, connecting that. That is for the board to deem appropriate. Our comment was to recommend or suggest placement of sidewalks on the connecting roadway. And note that there are two accesses to the location right there. It's more easily to see the main driveway on the south side. As well as there is another driveway, I think it was Beaver Dam Road, yes. And I do not believe that they are planning on touching the part that connects to Atwater at the moment. That would be the most direct connection to, if there is an existing or planned trailhead on to the northeast of the property. It would be a potential recommendation to add approximately 350 feet of sidewalk along that road within the property of the site. So that's Weston Sampson recommends consideration for that connection.
So right now there, that ring road does not have a proposed sidewalk, is that correct?
There's a sidewalk all around.
Oh, it has a sidewalk.
It's the driveway piece
So you're
doesn't
saying,
connect to the west.
It's all the way around the site. The one place it's missing is between Atwater and the site itself, and that end of the sidewalk, which is right here, sorry.
oh, okay,
Across the street, I'm sorry. But again, that's what we had brought up right at the end of my presentation, that this is something that we're gonna add in to tie it back to Atwater.
okay.
It
You're
was the
gonna add-
part about the Beaver Dam
Okay,
that we were excluding, at least at the moment, is this is no longer the driveway.
so the outcome is an additional sidewalk section from Atwater to the intersection of the ring road.
Correct, yeah,
Okay,
there's
great.
currently no sidewalk there, and they're adding, the applicant will be adding sidewalk there.
Have you addressed them? And the last open was also, the fourth open comment that we have, here today, a very minor one. While reviewing the site plan, there is one crosswalk with an internal to the site that is fairly close to, there's the mini of the rain garden. There's a sidewalk that goes around the rain garden, and there is a crosswalk that connects that rain garden to close to where the phase 2 building is. It's fairly close to an existing intersection. Granted, it is the Beaver Dam that will no longer be accessed. For clarification, I would like to ask whether that will be emergency access or like not used at all. I'm happy, may change the comment. I'm allowed to ask you a question.
Okay, why not? So, I mean, currently, what's going on here? This is a bunch of infrastructure. We got some switch gear and stuff. Most of it's for, phase 2, but we also have a pump station for, the sewer pump station to get off site. This is basically gonna be a gravel drive now. This area is, I'm sorry, this area is very steep. It erodes out a lot. Anybody who was at the sidewalk today saw what's going on. And basically as it washes out, it dumps right into wetlands. And so we're trying to not allow that. So this portion of it is basically going to be returned to a natural state. So that's why there's no sidewalk being proposed. But this portion here, we can certainly tie it back in. It wasn't being proposed because there's no infrastructure to tie it into on Atwater. And then there's interconnectivity between the MAC and CST on site as it stands.
Matt, the only traffic going up that spur that was Beaver Dam Road or, no, up top that's being abandoned would be to access the electrical infrastructure.
Correct. And
As it relates to the proximity to the crosswalk, there'll be very little traffic
Exactly.
in that little spur.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you. So with that response, as the connection to Beaver Road Dam is going to be returned to a more naturalistic state, there's not necessarily going to be an intersection there. The comment was to say, can you shift that crosswalk closer to the intersection? I don't know if it was like 10 feet or something like that, but if there's no intersection, then the comment is no longer. So that's a general overview of the 4 open comments that we had. One was dealing with MassDOT potentially required widening and more just the striping of dedicated bike buffer versus the shoulder for bikes and pedestrians. The second one was just an overview of delay as it results with improvements overall that they are providing. And the third one was the extra bit of sidewalk, which they've indicated that they're planning on. Thank you for your time. Please, any questions?
So I don't know if this goes to you or CFT, but so you talk about bike lanes on Forest Road, but no bike lanes on Atwater. And so I'm wondering what traffic analysis has been done on Atwater for the cars, traffic, biking, and walking. It would make sense to me, but though I know Atwater is very wide, that you would continue the bike lane up to the site, not just have it on School Street. So I'm wondering why that isn't being discussed.
So right now, the width of Atwater in its classification, right now, Atwater is classified as a local roadway, and we generally, you generally wouldn't be adding bicycle lanes to the local roadway. But even if so, the roadway itself is not even wide enough right now to generally support the travel lanes that actually should be there. So in addition to that, 10 more feet to add bike lanes, we're now actually, all of that is now inside the wetland area, because you can only really widen one way on Atwater, because the south side of the roadway wrecks up pretty quickly with the left. So we'd be widening all that 10 feet into the wetland, which is something, being the type of roadway that Atwater is, and generally it's what we would expect for bicycle routing. I mean, the idea might be a little different if we're talking about pedestrians. The bicycles are generally keeping with the traffic for a good amount of that time on Atwater. That didn't seem like it was any the actual overall benefit compared to the wetland impact that comes with that. Because that wetland is the entire length of that one. That we have.
Can you explain what bicycle accommodations we are making? on
Yeah,
that?
right now, we will be providing shared use bicycle lanes. So with the buffer bicycle lanes that we are providing, the widening road between the on School Street from the ramps to Atwater. And then from Atwater on, we'll be providing shared use pavement marking share roads, we call them, for that entire length of Atwater. That doesn't necessarily require wiring, widening. They're marked on the roadway, any appropriate signage that has to go with those for share the road. And that's how we do it with that. And that avoids any of the impacts of the land on the north side. And again, like I mentioned before, most likely if it got flagged, wetlands on the other side of the roadway too, because for a lot of the year, it is wet in that area between the ledge and the actual roadway, even though it might not be considered to the general audience.
That Sharrow is the same as the existing condition on Lower School Street right now. That they have that lane with that signal on the roadway.
So it's that type of level.
Little.
Again, some of that has to do with the fact that, again, Atwater itself is classified as a local roadway. It's the lowest of the classes for roadway as opposed to School Street, which is a major arterial.
Yeah,
roadway.
Atwater
You'd
doesn't
expect
even have a
separate
line down the
service
middle,
on that type of roadway.
So there's no line on Atwater down the middle.
There there isn't now. I don't know if we're planning on putting one back.
I thought I saw that.
We have it for the first couple hundred feet, because we knew we were gonna do that, but at that point.
What about
The
traffic?
center line doesn't really change the bike condition for that. It would be more like shoulder line to it, but.
So have you assessed, like, and maybe it's a different topic, but safety on Atwater for all of that going on, or is that a different night?
No, I mean, that is part of the traffic and what we would be looking at, and I think what we're trying to describe right now, classification of what Atwater is a local roadway, the amount of traffic that's on Atwater, even with our development. Would not necessarily necessitate a separated bicycle facility. It doesn't mean we don't want to provide improvement, we are trying to provide the accommodation where we can, which the share of. Is our understanding or our belief that a full bicycle facility and the widening of Atwater that would be involved is probably ends up being, let's say, 12 or 15 feet of wide to the north to provide bike lanes in each direction. Plus the additional width of the lane, but again, Atwater's not even wide enough theoretically if you were making it into what foot lanes now in each direction. And all that impact is to the wet. And that wetland should be right up to the roadway for most of that.
Is there any chance of getting a pathway that is not along Atwater to the site from School Street?
Like,
Both sides of the School Street Atwater are owned by other entities. So the wetland is owned by trustees of the reservation. You have two parcels before you get to the crossing for Sawmill Brook. Sawmill Brook is owned by trustees of the reservation. So that width of roadway is pretty much set. Unless the town wants to
I
make it.
guess I'm talking about an alternate.
Like up over the
Trail.
hill through the compost site?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Some
you
other,
can, I think you can currently cut up through Dr. Gurley's and then back down the other side and onto, you get onto Atwater about halfway down.
But that being said, that is private property. That's not public right of way to do that, which and we can't send people onto private property. Right.
It's also a hill.
So then you're talking about, one of the things you said earlier, if I heard you correctly, is that you're gonna encourage cycling to work as well. So in the two peak times, when all the cars that you showed will be moving down Atwater, I assume bikes will at the same time. So that's just, I mean, there's gonna be some safety considerations, I think. Sharrow, I'd never heard that term before. I get it. Thanks, Mark, for pointing out that they exist already in town, but I've ridden my bike on that road and it's a little airy. You know, I don't know. I'm just saying, you know, we should think about how best to consider that.
Yeah, and what we've tried to do is try to extend that bike accommodation from its current terminus to the maximum extent possible or feasible, which is Atwater. Because once you hit Atwater, it's a environmental.
Yeah.
And I'm not even worried about permitting, I'm worried about, it's just all wet and paved. And I'm thinking, I don't read Concom's or matching PZ, but I can, I'll get the other.
Sue had a comment.
So this might be for a different part of the hearing. Terrific traffic study and the comments on the study, it all relates to once cell signaling is up and running. How do we deal with safety and traffic concerns during the construction process of all of the trucks and other equipment?
So I'm gonna fill in for Craig Keller, who is our project manager for Columbia Construction is responsible for. There are, for all intents and purposes, most of the trucks for this project are coming right off 128 down School Street and onto Atwater, so they're not into the general public flow of traffic going through. The hours of operation for construction activities are going to comply with your local regulations. And then basically they have their own codes that they have to follow for hauling and heavy vehicle traffic. So once you get off of Atwater, you're onto the site, it's fully contained. The site currently is being fenced. We're going through a whole set of security issues. And they have their own, whoever's bringing stuff to their site has their own DOT criteria that they have to follow, and have their permits that have to be updated. And current. I'm sure if I answered all of your questions, but there's-
Any thought about temporary mitigation on Atwater? With people who are biking and walking and going to the Mac and back, with the heavy truck traffic.
So there's gonna be some utility work on Atwater, and during that time, they'll be flagged and coded so that safety will be, and it's a narrow road, so we're gonna have to figure out how traffic goes, but that's basically part of the Columbia's, traffic protocols that they've been working through. I know that they're looking for some sort of, I don't have any specific answers for you. I can tell you that Columbia is a very, the high level, contractor. It's not anything that they're gonna take lightly. We do have neighbors on the road, so we are gonna have to work with them, and we already have been talking to them to make sure that everybody's gonna be accommodated with those issues. They will be working through, hours of operations, and they will have call schedules so that people know what's going to go.
And Greg Keller will be in subsequent hearings, so he can give you more detail if you need it.
Great, thank you.
Well, I'm also concerned about the construction, large truck volume, particularly coming on that coming northbound on 128, which I presume, is where they'll mostly come from, but I don't know. And turning left onto School Street. And their hours are probably, for 3 years of construction or whatever, are probably more in conflict with the school hours than your employees. So they're coming 7 to 7:30, and that Essex traffic coming from Essex at the 7:20 to 7:45 is heavy and stressed. Because it's people driving to the middle and high school. So 180 days a year, there's a significant traffic burden at southbound on School Street in those hours. So I think that's almost like your biggest pinch point in the whole phase 1, phase 2 is that construction timeframe. And then going down my concern on Atwater during construction and then during operations is, I agree with you, the width of the road, and we walked that this afternoon, is wetlands bound, and there may be some places where we could get a little more width, but I tend to agree with you that the share of the road and markings would be a positive thing. But the other piece is speed. And we saw it this afternoon. I mean, people are going down that road at 40 miles an hour at least. So 2 things is, what can we do to make sure that your construction employees who are going to be late to work in the morning, and heavy construction equipment slow down in particular. And then once you're up and running, how do we get all users of Atwater to slow down? So what can we do that's creative? And I'll look to all of you
I would think that you probably employed the same strategies that Manchester has effectively employed on other streets with those conditions, like School Street, where you come off 128 and you're immediately told how fast you're going. That kind of thing.
Enforcement, I mean, nothing
we've
like a
been
few
very
tickets
effective
that to slow everybody down.
They gotta be on random days and random hours at the same time.
I mean, enforcement, and posting. I don't even know if that's a post, if
Traffic
that's
calming
posted.
on Atwater Ave.
Right.
It happened, actual physical traffic calming.
I mean, there's probably things that we can have a discussion. I don't think we're ready, prepared to offer anything to review right now. It's something that we can discuss in future different measures. You don't really just want to come up with one thing on the top anyways, because
Right.
that's something you want to talk with who's driving that roadway every day. I'm not saying this is the answer, I'm just saying, I'm using that as the example, like. You can use the example, it always comes out things like speed bumps, for instance. They're great, and so you have to drive over them. So, or you get a little lucky. there's
Right,
no-
we have a lot of
there's no
business-
houses, so there's no
We have a lot of
parking.
business traffic from
But,
the,
I would suggest that what we.
but that's what I'm
we-
saying, like, you don't want to say anything off the top now, that's something we can definitely have a discussion about.
I think we can come back.
Yeah, and we're not trying to be prescriptive with
Yeah.
speed humps,
Right.
but I do think,
It's just the
There's
example I
a-
always give, it's the one that I would know. so I'm talking-
yeah, there's an acknowledgement that everyone's sharing this road, so this is sort of a, complete street in the sense that everybody's mixed mode, right? Everybody, bikes, peds, scooters, wheelchairs, maybe walkers, cars, delivery trucks, all gonna be in that same roadway, which is kind of a rural road. So, how can you kind of nice the rural character of it, but it's gonna see increased traffic, so how can we provide some traffic calming, whether that be through striping, signage,
Yeah,
physical,
And again, there's definitely things we can definitely
Physical,
discuss. about
yeah.
that. I will say the widening out the roadway.
that'll make it go faster, yeah.
So I can say that,
That's not.
so, and that's just, it's just not, and you don't even know you're doing it. It's the little guy in the back of your head talking that if the road's wider, you feel safer and therefore you, that's. So. Different things, different markings on the roadway, even though you might not think they do a couple miles an hour on.
You put fog lines on, for example?
That's something you could think about doing. The center line's a little more interesting when it comes to things like bike combination, because that's not what's gonna keep the bike in the road, is they're not gonna be in the center road. Hopefully. But shoreline is definitely something. One thing going back to, I think it was brought up earlier, is when it comes to construction is a lot of the work that we are doing at Atwater is utility work, so it's not gonna be 1,000 feet at a time. It's gonna be 100 feet at a time, because you can't lay that, like, all at once, right? So, so just something that, it won't be one lane of traffic for 1,000 feet. It's gonna be every individual day, it'll just keep it going. So it's not as impactful as the whole thing.
Do you know at this point what the timing of that utility work will be, how long that will take?
If you remember my first presentation, we
Kind of,
stepped
yeah.
through, the different phases that we're gonna be going on. Right now, well, the first thing that they're gonna be doing is a lot of site prep, site work. I believe most of the utility work is gonna kick in the end of this year. And then, there's offsite stuff that's going on right now. But when the interconnectivity of utilities are in this year, and then we go into buildings. My next presentation, I can bring it up to go over it.
Did you specifically state that the approximate length time, like months, years, it? Where there will be continuous utility work on that road?
So I can't specify if it's gonna be continuous utility. It depends upon a bunch of different factors, which you don't know. At my next, at the civil presentation, I can dive into that.
Thank you.
utility work will slow people down.
Yeah. They will come to a crawl.
Just another question about Atwater Ave in terms of its permanent state after you've done the utility work, you've had to repave or rebuild the culvert. If you're thinking about pedestrian and bike circulation and stormwater management, right now, I think everything just sheets off into the wetlands. We're adding more traffic, which creates more particulates and will increase, the potential for water pollution. Is there a scenario where you're looking at something like vertical curbs on both sides of the road to kind of do double duty to manage stormwater capture so that you're not sheeting off pollutants into the wetlands and using that as a kind of a traffic calming strategy too, because it's got a sense of narrowing the road, even if it keeps the same, effectively the same distance. Just wondered if you could sort of put two hats on and think about stormwater management and vehicular calming at the same time.
So at this point in time, paving is really dealing with the flow on hot water. There's no utility, there's no stormwater utility improvements being proposed. And there's no curbing that's being proposed. pretty much what's theirs, we're gonna keep as it is.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that we are. I guess you may not be being triggered if you're not doing any improvements in Atwater. I thought you were doing utility work down Atwater, so if there is. I mean, if we're adding more traffic with X number of employees, that just creates more particulates to wash into the wetlands. And so I guess I'm just asking the question about the overall stormwater management strategy. And whether you've thought about controlling pollution off of Atwater and if that could be part of the traffic calming strategy, perhaps, just throwing some ideas
Yeah,
out there.
I would, so we've been in touch with, I mean, we talked with Chuck and Nate on a very regular basis.
Yeah.
This would be in their purview. They would also have to maintain this after we updated it.
Right.
So that would be a direct discussion with them.
Yeah.
As of today, it's been repaved and keep it as it is.
So the other comment is, we have had somebody from the Bike and Pedestrian Committee attend some of these meetings, and if they're not on today, perhaps we can seek their direct input on this issue. Make sure that they have weighed in on it or Jess?
He was here earlier.
Oh, sorry. Well, we'll follow up. Okay, so at this point, are there other comments from the board? Don't forget, we will have additional time. Mark?
Okay, two questions. One is at the meeting out on the site, you talked about that back entrance. Yes, you talked about the back entrance where the parking lot to get to the trustees thing is in that entrance would be open that runs through the Beaver Dam Road and through the storage site. And so is that gonna be an access that's open all the time to access the site here?
So there's two phases to this. One is there's an easement that's being proposed. I'm not going to speak to that, Mark.
That's an easement that already exists. The one,
Okay, all right.
there's an easement for the benefit of the cell signaling property over the Brady property.
Mhm.
And so that will be available.
But the driveway connection will be open all the time.
Yes.
I mean, it's
So
not
it's-
gonna be gated, it's not gonna be
Nope,
for
it's not being
emergency access.
gated.
I know you have the right to cross the property.
So it's there for a couple, this back one is here for two reasons. One is fire access, we have
Mhm.
secondary. And then it's also provide a more direct connection for the site. It's not paved on purpose to be a secondary piece of it, but we're not looking to close it. It's part of the overall plan.
Mhm.
We did modify the easement with Tim Brady so that we could improve the slope and the conditions going in. So it's going to be widened and there was a place where the grade exceeded 10%, and that's being taken down.
But it will be available for use by employees or anybody.
Probably it would be available, but it won't be primary access.
Okay, all right, and,
I mean, is there, what are you?
well, I'm not
trying to
sure,
look for?
I just wanted to kind of clarify that and see whether, I mean, just how much use that may or may not get, so, and then, you mentioned about the connection to the MAC, talked about traffic, possible traffic calming, Beaver Dam Road access. Oh, so you talked about, well, shared use of Atwater Ave, for cars and bikes and anything else. But what is the specific, like peak and, midday, like non-peak, but business hour kind of traffic on, Atwater Ave? Yeah.
Are you asking me or are you asking?
Oh, yes, it is, but I'm not-
He's back there, I'm trying to look it up really quick. But I was just curious because, you know, shared road with cars is fine, again, depends on speed and the number of vehicles and et cetera, so, was just kind of curious. Yeah, I think that.
So the today number,
Mhm.
yesterday, basically.
Yep.
Probably the worst hour of the day is the PM, peak hour, and that's about 80 cars going eastbound. And about 75 going westbound. So
A little more than one of
not
them.
much, realistically, we're going to vehicle volume for that type of road. That type of roadway probably should be able to handle it at capacity, on the free flow parts. Let's say like 5, 6, 7. We're gonna add, I think what I was saying about all of our traffic capacities at one. We're dividing that 250, in one direction, based on 90% of 250, so now a little over 200, in one direction. In the AM, the same amount basically the other direction in the PM, and the other 25 or 30 or so. Maybe on 6, so I forgot, so we're still, what would be under capacity? But again, what we did talk about, yes, the roadway is not actually as wide as it probably should be. There will be mixed traffic for bikes and vehicles, and just naturally, the roadway itself feels smaller because of the tree cover too. So it feels like you're running through a canopy as you drive down, especially in these months. Some of which itself, luckily, actually is a traffic company, the trees, so those. But that's what we like, so we do agree that we're gonna be increasing traffic, a good amount on the roadway. We're not quite at capacity, but that doesn't mean that the street there will be much busier than what we've seen today.
That's all.
I have one other question, and then this may be for the traffic expert. That we're thinking about, all these issues with not winter conditions. How, in the peak winter storm, or, storm conditions, the road narrows with both on site and at water with snowbanks. Are there additional things we should be thinking about, for winter, that are customary or unique to the site?
We can contribute too. I mean, I know the culvert is like a higher freezing. It's gonna be exposed all year, flowing underneath the new culvert, so it's really similar to bridge conditions.
I need to speak up a little bit so Gail can hear you.
Sorry, I was just noting that like during the site walk today, we were walking over the culvert on Atwater Ave that's gonna be replaced, so that is almost serving as a small bridge. So as an exposed piece of asphalt that's gonna freeze before the other areas. So the proper pretreatment and plowing is necessary, so sometimes there might be signage.
Are there any no salt areas, given the proximity to, Atwater, to Sawmill Brook?
It's a public street, so it would be up to the town, I would think.
How about on your site?
For salt,
Yeah, I mean, or should we be
Well, yeah,
thinking
it's
about
existing
restricting salt
condition.
use?
I guess all these are existing conditions, so there'll be good site history for, obviously there's not a manufacturing or pharmaceutical company. It's a quarry, so the road traffic is gonna change significantly, but there will be some historical information an applicant has from winter conditions. We do look, I guess, for the site civil, we'll be looking at like the snow plow and
Okay.
where they're stockpiling snow to make sure that those are not blocking fire access and safety issues. But I think you're getting to the more general.
I guess I'm asking, are there any restrictions around snow removal or street treatment that we should consider, given the surrounding environment, or not?
There might be in our current bylaw for stormwater.
Or stormwater is one thing, but
Water resource
I'm thinking of
protection.
salt, or are there any steep areas that, under icy conditions would be problematic, or? The answer might be no.
For another, certainly steep grade, so I think that maybe covered more in the say civil discussion when we talk about grading, topographic changes is the topic of 2 weeks up. We can flag that, revisit. So you have any comments on winter conditions in your studies or suggested mitigation for this?
I guess the question is, does your methodology also take into account winter?
Like in terms of just, in terms of traffic steps, we're not gonna see much difference between winter and summer. We talk about that.
Maybe fewer bikes.
Cause it's a site, so it's a known site. It's not like it's schools off, schools on. So on our site, we're there regardless of what time of year it is. So on a snow day, probably less people want to go into work probably.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that situation. In terms of the actual solid version of solid, what's actually happening on that where I kind of over my particular purview of traffic, but I think a public roadway, it's kind of, again, it is kind of up to the town about what they particularly would be doing. Answering part of your other question, which I was focusing on, the rest of the day, that water is actually pretty constant. Throughout the day now, obviously we will change that for peak hours. We will have much limited traffic for the rest of the day, but that water generally is that 100 cars total, somewhere around there, the entire day.
Okay, we do want to talk about fiscal impact, but let me just see if there are any comments on traffic from, I guess, would be online. Can you just stop sharing for a second so I can see? Anybody online have any comment about traffic? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody, so I'm gonna jump back to Darren on some comments on the fiscal analysis.
Sure, and I don't necessarily need to present these up again, but I guess, so the other standard that we looked at was the fiscal analysis standard in the bylaw. So this is based on the initial applicants, or the applicant's initial filing, so we looked at the fiscal impact of the project, trying to verify that this is gonna have a positive impact on the town, based on revenue estimates, and then also accounting for the municipal service costs of the additional development. So looking at the capacity of existing municipal facilities, we have found that there, and I guess the overall fiscal impact is going to be net positive. The applicant had done a study and found that they were going to be generating $560,000 of additional economic activity in the subject area. The second item we look at is the cost to the town of the additional services that was paid for, but the cost would be $35,000 based on services that the town or the applicant is looking to use during our site walk today. We, for example, looked at the water, which will be extended up in Route 128 north into the property. And then the last item was just the gross revenue per year, which is also similarly in that $597,000 range. And no comments on the methodology the applicant came up with. There is going to be obviously with substantial creation of a large office and research facility, substantial economic benefit to the town. We didn't have any specific comments and no follow-up for the applicant on those items.
Okay, can you make sure your memo on that gets to the finance committee too? Can you? Any comments or questions from the board?
Just a quick question on the, when you did the analysis for, what the anticipated tax revenue would be, we didn't back out what the town currently gets for that site.
Didn't back out what?
What the town currently gets for that site. So just trying to get what the actual increase in property tax. I mean, I think it's probably only
That was specified that in the impact study. It did talk about the assessed value currently in the current tax books, which is not significant. It's in here somewhere.
I mean, just doing a rough calculation myself was probably about 51,000. So I was just curious why, if it's saying this is the profit generated that,
The existing quarry property is assessed at 4.5 million and generates 47,000 in property tax revenue. The estimated property tax after construction will be 1,444% increase over existing revenues, is what was in the report.
so, but my question is to the gentleman speaking that, I guess I was looking at it that this was an analysis of what the increase in tax revenue for the town was. And so in usual course, you would say this is the, what's calculated out, what we currently get. You took out 35,000 for what would be anticipated cost to the town. So I just was wondering why the 47,000 or the 50,000 was back up.
Yeah, no, I think what we were looking at in the bylaw was just the total future real estate tax, not the increase or the change
Not the
from
net,
current-
okay.
Not the net. So that's all we have listed, but is it, that
No,
study
that's
right
fine,
there
I
is
just-
gonna be, yeah, we were just looking at the total from the study that was provided.
Any other comments? Any comments from the public, about the, Weston Sampson's comments about the fiscal analysis? I see Sarah on, but Sarah will get you those comments. I know your committee is also looking at this. Okay, hearing nothing, I think we will now continue the public hearing until, our next meeting, June 24th. And Cell Signaling will tell us what topic we're going to do then, but I think we would like to try to do stormwater next meeting if we can, right? Because Laura's gonna be
doing both
stormwater and landscape if we can.
The program is all the civil and the
And
landscape,
landscape.
none of the light.
On the 24th, great. Okay, so, okay,
I will be too.
okay, so,
Do we have a schedule? Are we meeting every 2 weeks now? So that
that's
we
the
can
current
plan out.
plan, yep, so the next meetings currently are June 24th, July 8th, and July 22nd. That's the current schedule.
And then August 19th.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to August yet. Like to try to do just one meeting in August. That's been our tradition, but we'll see. And I know we have a little bit of attendance issue on one of those July dates, so we may have to adjust. But, okay, so I'll take a motion to continue the public hearing till June 24th at, let's see, Gail, should we, and Mark, we have other public hearings that night at 6:30. So I'm thinking we should put cell signaling at 7:30. We always take our other business. So those other hearings are scheduled for
Think
6:30.
you'll get through those three items
You know,
in an hour?
I think we'll need an hour.
Think you'll get through them in an hour? As opposed to,
An hour and a half.
and then, or continuing this to a different night.
I
Those,
think
I
that- I
believe
think we
those
committed to-
those are already advertised.
Yeah, those are already advertised for 6:30. Let's continue to 7:30 and we may have to, we're not gonna complete those hearings that night. We're gonna have to continue them as well.
Okay.
Take it as a package. Well, we may, so let's continue to 7:30. 7:45, would that be better?
That's
Well, you can do it. No,
Yeah.
don't do it, don't do it.
No, we're gonna start 6, yeah, because we have a lot to cover with cell signaling, so we have to manage the other ones, we'll do that. So 7:30, continue the public hearing to 7:30 on June 24th. And, do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you on the 24th at 7:30. Thank you for coming at 5 and sticking around.
Sorry, spilled it.
Okay, yeah, docs and. You want some other board or something? Do you want some other?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a few more things to thank you, chairs. So it is late, but we, I'm hoping we can get through the liaisons. In your packet are, the most effective way to do this. There's a list of liaisons. I guess I can bring it up and share it.
Packet that you're talking about.
Yeah, no, but that's not the packet I'm talking about. I'm talking about the packet for tonight. So before you open up your big giant box, Christmas present here. We have typically, and maybe Gail may have updated the contacts. I was using a list. We have typically had a liaison to a number of boards, and so that does not mean you have to attend every board meeting. It means that you know, if whoever's the liaison to the bike and pedestrian committee would call them up or email them and say, hey, now's the time to give us comments on the bike and pedestrian work at cell signaling, or we have another special permit, you know, kind of keeping them, being the place that they might, you know, touch base on them. There is one group that I know Ron customarily did go to all of the CPC meetings. And I'm not sure we have to go to all of them, but there is a training coming up that Jack Burke had asked that whoever is the liaison go to, and I can provide that information. The ZBA, Sue's been doing that. I think you don't go to all meetings, do you?
I wish I could,
Right,
but,
because they're helpful, but you review, like you also review the minutes of the meetings of the group that you're liaisoning with. I think it's unrealistic to ask to go to every meeting, so. So I guess I'll start with,
Are there existing assignments for these?
there were, but I deleted them all because there's so many changes with the board, so, trying to think of a good process to do that. To do
Maybe
this.
looking for volunteers.
I'm looking for volunteers. Maybe tonight what we could do is people who are particularly interested in one of these groups.
So it looks like you have to, all of us will be on multiple groups here.
Yes.
Correct. And we may not, let's start by saying, are there any of these that we don't really need a liaison? I'm not sure, do we need a liaison for Council on Aging?
Probably not.
Probably not. All right, let's delete that one.
We're not assessing, right?
Pardon me?
Assessing? I don't think we've ever.
No, okay. I took Ron's old list, health. Probably not. I think Mark can, I mean, our planning office can also be the liaison for a lot of these.
Yeah, I mean, if there's something that needs coordination.
Right.
I mean, I do attend many of these, well, several, not many, but
that
several.
again?
I do attend several of these other committee meetings.
Okay. So which ones do you attend? Let's put that on there.
Okay,
Open space, Parks and Rec.
Conservation,
You attend all the Concom meetings?
well, not all, the ones that don't conflict with something else.
Okay, good.
I have attended, I attend all the ZBA. Obviously, the planning board, housing trust. Attended some stream team, I try and attend all the CPC ones.
Conservation is 46, 40.
So 34 is community preservation.
which you
Oh,
do with
thanks.
that, right?
I do think this one needs somebody.
Mark said he goes to.
Well, you can still have,
Yeah.
Right,
you can still have a liaison.
we still need somebody on that one. At least
So how often do these committees meet? Is it consistent? across the
varies,
board?
it varies.
Usually
It all
once a month.
varies, some, once
I mean,
a
I'm
month,
doing
some
the-
are Twice.
I'm doing the harbor planning committee, so I think
I'll stick with finance,
okay.
So,
And then-
unless somebody else wants.
so the
to.
Affordable Housing Trust Board
That's you,
is me, but it's a formal,
right? But that's okay, you can then report out.
sure, yeah.
Anybody want to do bike and pedestrian? That is important.
I'll do that.
And Gordon's on the dip, so.
So let's talk about that, Chris. Are we gonna switch you out and me in, even though I'm on it anyway?
Yeah,
Yes,
Just different role?
yeah, you
Yeah.
just, all you're doing is
Just
when
re-
there's something that has planning board interest, you report it out.
So I'm going to it every month anyway.
Yeah, so you're
I
it.
hear Chris on it all the time. So can I be actively involved on it?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, then
Can be
I'll
on.
stay where I am and you're free.
Go do something else.
You're done.
He's got nothing.
Steve just wrote me about that today. I told him, I said, you suggested it, and it's a good suggestion. I'd be happy to do it.
I'll stick with the ZBA
Okay.
because it's helping me.
Yeah. Let's see, where's it at? It's up top. I think Laura was doing sustainability. I'll put her on that. Parks and Rec, we can probably let Mark do that. And open space, is
I
more,
do that as well.
this is so hard.
It's been doing
One
that.
short
That's
task.
why I can't go to all.
No, no.
There's often
Yeah.
conflicts for the
Right.
same, so I have to pick and choose, so.
Um,
I also sometimes do
do you
this.
sometimes do historic?
I sometimes do that too.
So self-signal's already been in front of Concom?
Yes,
Yes.
we have,
Yeah.
I just saw that in my pile
I just
today.
was
What did
worried
you
if
see?
they would loop back around.
The, Concom. Order of conditions.
Order of conditions, yes. Council on Aging, I don't think we need. Cultural Council.
Are we still a public meeting right now?
Yep.
Yes.
ADA Committee. I'm gonna suggest that Laura do that. I don't think the school committee, I've been on the school committee person forever and it's not that. Laura, do you want to just be the liaison with the ADA committee? Or not? I put you on as sustainability.
I have a bandwidth issue.
Okay, that's fine. Oh. Okay, I think that almost covers most of them. I'll just select word.
Library might be an interesting one since they're trying to do expansion.
You want to just be the person that touch base? Thank you, Mary.
Be careful what you.
I don't think there's anything yet, but I think it. And I've been doing check dams, so I'll continue that. All right, that almost fills everything
The
in.
CPC is.
CPC. Right,
I don't want to put that on until MBTA, so.
If
Right.
I'm giving up dip, I can do CPC.
oh,
Third name.
well, don't forget, Coastal Stream Team, I happen to.
Just you.
Okay, I think that pretty much fills it in. We can always move things around. North Shore Task Force Rep. That is, is that the MS,
I do that too. That's MAPC.
Well, I'm the, I think I'm the official person, but I don't go because it's all about cities. So,
Yeah, it's a lot.
They
A
did
lot
have
of
a
it's
training on,
yeah, I get the,
MBTA that was not bad.
right, I think part of it, so another thing you do is you subscribe to their, go on the website and subscribe to the notices for any of these meetings. You can subscribe to different things, and then you can just, when you get the email, you look and see if there's any agenda items that are relevant to the planning board. You don't even have to go to the meeting, you can then call chair or listen to the meeting afterwards or review the minutes and say, the coastal stream team is concerned about Sawmill Brook, which is related to cell signaling. So, you know, that's, for example, I put myself as coastal stream team, I'll connect with them and just say that. That you might wanna, we're gonna talk about stormwater at the next meeting, you might wanna attend. So that kind of thing, just a face and a liaison. Okay, great.
So can I make a motion that we approve the assignments?
I don't think we even need a motion, but sure,
I think we
be
do.
happy to. Okay, great.
We
Thank
made the
you.
motion.
Gail, I'll send this to you. So you don't have to try to read it online. Oh, Jack, okay, we have a motion. I have a Jack, is that Jack?
Yes,
Burke?
yes, Sarah, may I?
Yes,
speak?
of course.
Hi, everybody. Jack Burke, CPC. The CPC position is a statutory position, is required by the state. And a member of the planning board must be a sitting member and voting member of the CPC. So your other positions are liaisons. The CPC is an actual voting member, must be appointed by the Board of Selectmen after your nomination.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
We meet once a month, generally, sometimes twice in the winter, not in the summer. We have one meeting in July at the Chowder House, very more of a social. But we'll start meeting again in September. We meet on Thursdays at 5:30 via Zoom.
So Jack, did you say the select board makes the appointment?
All the select board does is affirm based on your nomination.
Okay.
I need to get you.
Well, that's what I was afraid of.
Okay, well, you can always amend your motion the next meeting. All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the slate as presented? All right, great. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah.
We laugh, but these are important and it's good to remember that. And so I'll post this, in next meeting's packet, so you can all make a note of which ones, and, we'll get the correct, when I post it, it'll have the correct contacts, because this is an old list. So, and I did hide a bunch of them. Great. We have minutes, of, May 23rd and May 28th. A motion to approve the minutes of May 23rd and May 28th, 2024. Is that a motion to approve? No, actually, you can't vote because you weren't.
No.
Yeah, you were. You first, you were
I'm gonna
here.
abstain. I didn't get a chance to read them.
Peter and I can vote.
Yeah, you were here on the 23rd. You were voted on the 21st and the 23rd, you can't vote. Gordon, because you were, but everybody else, have people read them or not? Okay.
Yes, they did.
Okay, so you'll move to approve them.
Yes,
Thank you. And you'll second. Okay, any discussion? So I have to take them separately because Gordon will abstain on the 23rd. All in favor of approving the minutes for the 23rd? And Laura and Gordon are abstaining. The 28th, all in favor? And Laura, we have 6-1 abstention. Thank you, Gail, for the timely minutes. It's very helpful. Any other matters? Any public comment on other matters or matters from tonight? Great, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, what's that?
What is this?
That's a packet for next time.
That's a packet for next time. Wow.
So we should read these.
Memorize them.
Like tomorrow.
Thank you,
Very organized.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. They were here. Okay.